Okay. Morning, members. We are quorate. Um, and if you have any issues or star leaf, let us know. I want to welcome everyone to the weekly meeting of the DAERA committee. I'll advise members of the committee will be recorded and broadcast throughout our buildings and online. And you can use your mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and muted. Um, I want to remind you that we will be reconvening the meeting at 3 o'clock this afternoon with a view to agreeing our draft report on the climate change bill number 2. Okay, members. Okay, first item on the agenda. I don't have any apologies registered here this morning. The second item is chairperson's business. I Members, Maggie's call. Some of you will be aware of the tragic passing of a 5-year-old Maggie girl called Maggie Black from Dunarm, County Antrim, just last month. And after Maggie started to experience stomach pains, her parents sought assistance from the emergency services. However, given the pressures on ambulance crews and the location of her home, the family was going to have to wait for over an hour for paramedic intervention. And Maggie's parents were fortunate enough to be able to call upon a family member who belonged to the fire service and arranged for a fire crew to attend as first responders. And Maggie's family has expressed gratitude to those firefighters for the support they gave her while she waited for acute medical assistance. An online petition has now been set up which calls for a more coordinated and joint approach between the emergency service to act as first responders if there are heightened pressures on ambulance crews. And a link to the petition has been included in the notes field of your pack at page 5. Members, are you be right to the Department of Health outlining the committee's support for the petition and seeking the department's support in addressing this issue?
Yep, 100%. Good man. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, members, the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, today's correspondence, you'll note a letter from the department. The Tier 2 Farm Business Improvement Scheme opened on the 10th of January, and those farm businesses previously submitted an expression of interest will be eligible to make a full application up until the 4th of April. It's important that we flag up this following the meeting online today to make farmers aware of this. Members, the women in farm management for your
Chair, could I intervene there for a moment?
Yes, Rosemary, yeah.
It's Rosemary speaking. Yeah, just to say on that Tier 2 scheme, what held it up? Are you aware of what held it up? Because in August there was a statement out saying that it would be coming forward, and it's taken it nearly 6 months to be open to the public. I've had several people contact me because they're concerned about this Tier 2 scheme is opened now now at the end of December, or open now in January, and the length of time to get it completed is increasing as the days go by, and we're concerned about that, getting it completed in the time that's left.
Yeah, well, Rosemary, perhaps we want to propose that we write to the department highlighting those concerns and ask for an explanation. That be proposal be okay?
Yeah. Yep, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, the Women in Farm Management. Members, for your information, our online survey on the experience of women in the local agriculture sector closes tomorrow, and we currently have over 150 responses, and it closes at midnight tomorrow. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of the people who have engaged in this here. And thank you for signposting it amongst the various networks. I want to perhaps make this final appeal for anyone who wants to participate in this consultation, which we will be compiled into a report, to do so by midnight tomorrow night. And I also want to make the point as well that if there's anyone who wants to participate in this online survey, without giving their name, that's also okay. So if you log on, you can just put your on the name section, just write anonymous, and your views will still be taken on board by the committee. So I just want to put the call out there now that anyone, particularly women, who are in the sector or who want to be in the sector, who have particular experiences and want to share, please go online. You can get the link is on the Assembly. It's on the committee page, but if you just go on the NI Assembly, you'll get it on the homepage there. And please respond by tomorrow at midnight. So I just want to thank people. And the committee team will be seeking expressions of interest from those respondents who have completed the survey and other key organisations to attend our stakeholder event on the evening of the 3rd of February. Okay, members. Okay, members, item number 3 in the agenda is the draft minutes. It's at page 8 of your pack. Can I get agreement just to sign them? You can just do a wee nod or thumbs up there. I'm not actually in Parliament buildings today. Something on this evening immediately after our 3 o'clock meeting. So if a wee thumbs up or nod, that'll do the job. Members, matters arising item 4. You recall from our consideration of the draft energy strategy last week that members requested sight of the department's action plan. Page 20 of your packs is the department's January 22 e-bulletin on the energy strategy, which states that the action plan for 2022 will be published shortly, and this will be forwarded to members in due course. Okay, members. Okay. Also, matters arising in the DAERA submission stage 2 January monitoring round proposals. In your table pack, you will see a written update from the department received on Tuesday evening respective proposals to the second stage of the January monitoring round. The department intends to declare an additional 3.6 million of reduced capital funding requirement. This is in addition to the 7.1 million declaration that we were informed in November. The additional 3.6 million relates to 2.5 million reduced requirement against the Rural Development Programme arising from financial modification, which allowed the department to maximise drawdown in EU funding and release national funding. This does not reduce the overall funding for the Rural Development Programme, and an additional 1.1 million associated with procurement issues with a replacement vessel. The department also intends to make a resource bid of 4 million to support compensatory payments to producers affected by avian influenza. And members, can we write to the department seeking clarity if the 2.5 million released funding could be used to support initiatives within the current Rural Development Programme, and why the anticipated capital underspend for AFBI vessel has doubled in the space of a few weeks? Happy enough? And members, we are due to we're due to receive a briefing from officials next week in relation to the budgetary proposals. So, we'll also have a further opportunity to quiz and raise some questions whenever the officials are here with us next week. Okay. Okay, members, moving on to item number 5. And again, if anybody wants to come in here, just hit the WhatsApp group facility here. I'm keeping an eye on it as I'm speaking. Members, item number 5 is the Climate Change number 2 bill, clause by clause consideration. We'll now commence our clause by clause consideration of Climate Change Bill number 2. It's at page 26 of your packs. It's a copy of the bill with finalised amendments which have been tracked for ease of reference. And members, I will now proceed through the bill, highlighting the areas of proposed amendment and seeking your views. If there's any, and if there's any dissent or any split opinions, we will go to a vote. Okay, members. So it's if you want to go to page 26 of your packs there. Okay, members. Okay, the bill's long title is on page 28 of the pack. Okay. Committee okay with the long title as drafted? Just a wee nod, keep me moving. Okay. Clause 1, emissions target for 2050. On page 28 you will see the proposed areas of amendment that is part of the target to achieve an overall reduction of at least 82% in greenhouse gas by 2050. There will be a net zero CO2 position. Is committee content with clause 1 subject to the areas of proposed amendment? Okay. Claire? Claire, and then Philip. Claire? Claire?
Thanks, Chair. I want to maybe just ask questions. I know that the Assembly itself has voted several times and votes have passed several times with the majority looking for net zero. So I'm just wondering if that impacts how the committee is thinking. If we do go ahead, then are we going against? Are we not reflecting the will of the House as well? And I have a few other queries maybe on that one too. I think just maybe getting a bit of legal advice on, if we set in law at least 82% within our legislation, how does that impact us across the rest of the islands? So if we've got the South having net zero, England, Scotland and Wales having net zero, what's the potential impact? Or is there any potential legal impact if we go for 82%? That's a very real potential of stopping other jurisdictions from reaching their legal targets.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Philip?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is the second bill that the committee is scrutinising, and my own position on the targets are on the public record. In the first bill I supported ambitious net zero targets, and this bill doesn't have a net zero target. It is an 82% target, so I'm not sure I'm sure I wouldn't be supporting that.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, I'm trying to get committee view on this clause 1 then. So what are we doing? John Blair.
Chair, thank you. And like previous speakers, there are a number of things throughout the proposed bill that I and I'm assuming my colleagues will have issues with. For example, matters around governance. There's suggestions of the department should and might and will consider and do other things. We need to see some pretty stringent actions around that, not least of all in line with existing commitments for independent bodies to look at environment, and that could perhaps down the line incorporate some governance of climate change matters, may or may not. But there are outstanding issues that are not being addressed through the bill or accompanying presentations and notes and reports that I've seen on this bill. So there will be, as we go through this, issues that are presented in a way that I could not immediately support, but I'm mindful that the department will still bring things forward, and that also that there will be a difference of opinion on this committee.
Okay, thank you, John. William? William, you're on mute.
Okay, no, just to say, I support the 82% target by 2050, as you are aware. And the reason I do that is because the industry feels anything else is too far and will damage industry. We have the Climate Change Committee also has recommended that. So it is my clear view that we support the 82% reduction by 2050.
Okay, thank you, William. Rosemary?
Yeah, I'm also thinking of the economy, and we've spoken to a number of stakeholders within the agriculture economy, and they are very adamant about the damage there will be to the agricultural economy in relation to the 2050 100%. So I am also in accordance with the CCC advice. So as in the other bill, I will be supporting the 2050 at least 82%, not the 2050 at least 100%.
Okay, and Patsy?
Just, and I'm going to get the screen up here. Just in regard to the specifics, is the red wording, is that amended part of the legislation or an accepted amendment by the department?
Yeah, Nick, do you want to come in out there?
Chair, thank you. Yes, indeed. So, Patsy, in the pack, the document that is presented is the original bill as drafted, and then the red wording are those areas which the committee has requested over the past number of weeks the department to consider amendment, and those are proposed in the document before you today. So, just by way of clarity, that the committee had agreed that as part of the overall reduction target to achieve at least 82% in total greenhouse gases by 2050, there would be 100% reduction in carbon dioxide. and that was part of the overall UK Committee on Climate Change's recommendations for Northern Ireland.
I have to be quite honest here and say that I share, because I'm representing a rural constituency, I share that there's a couple of things. One's a very pragmatic thing. To reach 100% by 2045, I'm listening very, very carefully to what the evidence that we've heard, and I heard that is going to be extremely difficult with financial problems with it. But there's another very practical element to this, and I can understand where people are coming from. They've looked at the parallels with Scotland. We've missed out 3 years here of legislative scrutiny and process that creates difficulties for it. But that aside, coming back to the suggested amendment there to be added to it, as you have explained it to me there, Nick, it isn't very clear from that amendment that that's the context it's been cited within, if you get me.
Chair, are you happy I come back?
Yeah.
So, Chair, through you, Patsy, that we had considered that amendment based on discussions we had in our informal deliberations a number of weeks ago with departmental colleagues, and it was the department was asked to go away and work with OLC to draft a potential area of amendment that would encompass the entirety of the CCC's advice, and that is what has been brought forward and proposed.
No, but what I'm saying is, as I read that there, I understand where it's coming from. I hear it very clearly where you're explaining it as it's coming from, but it's not specific, is at least 100% lower than the baseline for carbon dioxide. Now, I know what the baseline is, you know what the baseline is, but it hasn't specified what the baseline is, if you get me.
No.
I think a wee bit of expansion as to what baseline they're working to there would be important.
Chair, through you, so Chair, just to advise that I believe further down in the bill at clause 5 is where the definitions of baseline occur and are found in the bill relevant to all of the greenhouse gases, and that includes carbon dioxide. At clause 5 there is provision within the bill which includes the details of what constitutes the baseline for each gas.
Well, can it even be amended or suggested or added to as specified below in clause 5 or something along those lines?
Chair, if that was the view of the committee, we could recommend to the department to consider that, fleshing that out at clause 1, if the committee was minded and agreed to make that suggestion to the department at the next legislative phase.
Okay, members? Okay, so we're going to go back to the department then and ask them to flesh that bit out.
I think it would be helpful, Chair, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Clerk, Nick, are you okay with that?
Yes, indeed, Chair. So I suppose Chair, my advice would be to perhaps consider the committee's view on the clause 1 as drafted in the document, with the wording in red, and we will include in our bill report a recommendation that the department consider making it expressly linking it to clause 5. But perhaps it would be prudent to continue with the committee's view on clause 1 as it is before the committee today.
Okay. Okay, we've got Harry and Claire. Harry?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. And just to say that, I believe that even 82% by 2050 is already a seriously ambitious target. I know some people are saying to go higher than that, but I believe to go higher, it just moves the problem. Supply and demand for food will still be there. So for 100 by 245, it's undoable. It's just going to put, businesses aren't going to be able to attain it. They'll simply just not even try it. They'll be out of business. They couldn't do it. So I believe that 82% by 2050 is, as I say, is already very ambitious. So I would be holding to that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go bring Claire in before we do a vote on this clause 1. Claire?
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Sorry, it just takes me a second to unmute. But again, I mean, I think we've been around the houses on this one. I think we're very well aware of everybody's concerns, and of course, from the concerns from the agri sector. But again, I want to bring up, that our agri sector is largely an island-wide 100% industry, particularly in the dairy sector. That whole economy is island-wide. So I think that we still need a bit of clarity and legal certainty that if we are embedding at least 82% as the, lower than the baseline within legislation, could there be potential impacts, further economic impacts to the sector here in the north if we are meeting different targets? I think that that's a big one. I'm thinking about future investment into farms, particularly the smaller to medium sized farmers and those within the sector of the industry that do have island-wide consequences for their business.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I think as legislators, we all have a responsibility for not only for the climate, but also for the businesses, for the farm and the agriculture community that's out there. Now, we have spoken to the stakeholders and some of the different ones there, and the 82% appears to be something that is even going to be challenging for them to work to, but they're prepared to do that. So therefore, as legislators, we must be ensure that we're legislating for something that is achievable and that doesn't really harm another sector to an extent where it's really putting them out of business, putting them off the map in a sense. So therefore, I think that we must be realistic in this particular issue, and it's clear from all of the stakeholders that have been spoken to and all of the correspondence that we've got that 82% is the target that the majority of stakeholders and all are saying that they can and they will endeavour to work towards. And therefore, I think it's foolishness for this committee to be seeking to get 100% by 2045 when they know, when people knows that's not achievable, that's not going to work. So let us be sensible on this particular issue, and let us put forward targets that the people themselves that's in the industry say that they can meet and they're prepared to work towards, and rather than setting targets that can't be met and that's going to press the hard-pressed industry at the minute out of business.
Okay, thank you. Philip and then Claire. Philip?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Claire's point is well made that we've kind of been round and round the houses in this. I think it's important to remember this isn't agriculture policy we're discussing. It's not an agricultural bill. It's a climate change bill. And, I think it's disingenuous for some to say that all the stakeholders have said 82%. The majority of respondents to the consultation are of the view that the 82% isn't ambitious enough. So, I think we need to reflect that view. There were many people, including some from the agricultural sector, who agreed that the target of 82% wasn't ambitious enough. But the majority of respondents certainly agreed that the 82% targets weren't ambitious enough. Claire's also right. There have been a couple of debates in the Assembly that have said and agreed that we need to bring forward net zero climate change legislation. So I think it's really important to remember this is a climate change bill that affects all sectors of society across the north, and that there will be untold damage if we don't take decisive action, including to the agricultural and agri-food sector. So, I mean, potentially the committee could have proposed amendments to Clause 1. I mean, personally, we're not going to agree with that. We all have our own views on it. My view is that this Clause 1 isn't ambitious enough, and that is the view of the majority of people who responded to our consultation.
Right, Claire, and then Patsy.
Thanks, Chair. And again, just the last one on that one, we need to really realise, again, this isn't an agri bill, that this is a climate bill, and that the 82% has been based on an economic assessment, not a scientific. So it's not that 100% is not achievable, and it's not that going further is not achievable. So we need to stop that narrative. It's an economic decision. So therefore, having the right policies in place after the bill is passed in order to protect those most at risk, and, further investment to save anybody who has to mitigate a bit further needs to be there. We've discussed all this, so we need to stop this. It's not possible. It is possible. 82% is on an economic assessment, and therefore I think that we do need to have that further clarity on that impact, that if we embed in legislation at least 82% lower than the baseline, how would the economic consequences potentially play out for the agri-food sector who have an island-wide economy? If in the south they have a different target, how will that impact them? Because I'm concerned that there will be negative impacts.
Okay, and Patsy, because we're going to go to a vote on this here, I think.
Chair, we all want to, everybody's of similar, but we all want to make the right decision here for the people that we represent and for in the interest of climate change. We all know that. But now Claire has taken us into an area of query or question, and I'm throwing this out. Has there been any analysis done, any economic analysis done of the impact of net zero by 2045 and the impact of 82% by 2050? I don't know. It's because we've moved into that area of economic analysis as part of our discourse here this morning. I would like to know if there's been anything done that gives that sort of level, and indeed the all-island level of economic impact of that, as Claire has raised just.
Okay, thank you, Patsy. Rosemary?
It talks about an all-island. Likely so our dairy industry, our milk is sent to the south for very often for further work with it. But don't forget, we're within the United Kingdom, and we also have to go off the United Kingdom and Scotland, Wales, and it's the CCC legislation, the CCC recommendation that likely so that the department are following at the moment, because they are part of the kingdom.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, members, I'm going to have to go to vote on this because there clearly isn't a clear view on it. So in relation to Clause 1, the emissions target on this particular bill here, that this is focused on climate change number 2. This isn't any other piece of legislation. I'm going to ask for those who are in support of Clause 1. Please put up your hand, because I need to see it clearly, because of to be able to see it. In support of Clause 1. Sorry. Patsy, you're looking in there. Patsy, you're on mute. Patsy, you're on mute.
We're unmuted now, I think. Yeah. Chair, I'm just asking here, because obviously I raised the second bit was the amendment. Are we voting on Clause 1, or are we voting on Clause 1 plus the amendment here?
Oh, sorry, I should have said that there. Nick, do you want to come in that there?
I don't think. Sorry, I'm sorry for cutting across you, Chair, but from where I'm sitting, I couldn't vote on that because it's a suggested amendment with it, and we're waiting on further draft coming back from the department on it.
So
if you get me, I hope I'm right there.
So, Nick, can you come in here? Are we looking for a vote in Clause 1, and we recommend to include reference Clause 5?
Chair, so I suppose the proposition is that the committee is being asked for its view on Clause 1 with the additional red wording inserted, and that's based on our previous discussions and agreements through the informal deliberations where the committee endorsed the wording as put forward by the department. I suppose there's particular pertinence with regards to the wording in red, because as a result of the inclusion of the amendment to have 100% reduction of CO2 by 2050, as the department explained in previous weeks, there are a number of consequential amendments that have had to be made throughout the bill. As a potential suggestion, Chair, that the committee could consider and take a view on clause 1 with the red wording as it is in the document today, but in addition, if it was agreeable, recommend that the department consider making a specific linking between clause 1 and clause 5 at the next legislative phase.
Chair, I'm not trying to be pernickety on this at all, but I've just been there with these sorts of things before. I would prefer that if we are voting on something, that we have the actual wording. As now we've already said that we should seek a change to the wording, that I would have the wording in front of me. The amended wording, that is. So if we're voting as part of the package, including the amendment.
Okay.
And Chair, if I could as well, I mean, if we're voting on this, I am requesting that we seek a bit of clarity as well. I mean, I hear exactly what Rosemary's saying. This isn't about what political unions that we're in or any constitutional status. There's economic impacts here, very real ones for a sector that really needs to be protected here too. So it's about that, getting. I'm not sure that we as a committee have yet had that reassurance or further information on the potential impacts if we do have different targets for Northern Ireland than for everywhere else across these islands.
Okay. Nick, can you in there a wee second on that?
Chair, yeah, I suppose my advice would be to seek an overall committee view on those two propositions about whether the committee as a whole wishes to seek a further amendment to clause 1 and whether there's a consideration to seeking some sort of further clarity on an all-island basis, and depending on the committee's view, we will take that forward.
Yeah. Yeah, are we okay with that line of action then? And then we would defer in clause 1 then? Is that in order until we get that clarity?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, going to move on here now to clause 2, the emissions target for 2040. Clause 2 sets an interim emissions target to reduce emissions by 69% by 2040. Is the committee content with clause 2 as drafted? Okay. Okay. Members, we'll move on to clause 3 then. Emissions target for 2030. Clause 3 sets an interim emissions target to reduce emissions by 48% by 2030. Committee content with clause 3 is drafted?
Yeah.
Okay. Clause 4, power to amend emissions targets. This clause allows DAERA to amend targets through regulations, and on page 29 you will see the proposed amendments that will mean they can only be used to specific an earlier year or higher percentage. Can I content the clause 4 subject to proposed areas of amendment? Okay. Okay, members. And clause 5, meaning of baseline. Clause 5 defines the baseline metrics for each greenhouse gas and technical amendments are outlined in page 29 in reference to the net zero CO2 amendment. Can I content with clause 5 subject to proposed areas of amendment? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, clause 6, meaning of net NI emissions account. The clause defines the local greenhouse gas emissions account, and some technical amendments have been made to follow through on the net zero CO2 target by 2050. Can I content with clause 6 subject to areas of proposed amendment? Okay.
Yep.
And clause 7, meaning of the net NI emissions. Is committee content with clause 7 as drafted? Okay.
Yep.
Clause 8, Clause 8 enables the Department to bring forward regulations in the future to attribute emissions from international aviation shipping to count towards emissions accounting. Committee okay or content with Clause 8 as drafted? Okay. Clause 9 sets to the parameters for how the Department may credit or debit carbon units to the emissions account. You'll see on page 30 and 31 of your pack that 4 new subsections have been added specifically to address the crediting and debiting of carbon dioxide as part of the net zero CO2 commitment. Is committee okay that Clause 9, content with Clause 9 subject to the proposed amendment? Okay. Okay, carbon units, Clause 10 enables the Department to provide for a scheme in the future to track and monitor the accounting of carbon units. We okay with Clause 10 as drafted? Okay.
Yeah.
Clause 11 to 15 is carbon budgets. Members, Clauses 11 to 15 cover the system of carbon budgeting, including the principles of setting emission levels, timing and adjustment, as well as obligating all government departments to ensure that the emissions account for any period does not exceed the prescribed budget. Committee okay with Clause 11 drafted? Okay. Are you okay with Clause 12 is drafted?
Yep.
Clause 13 is drafted?
Yep.
14 is drafted? And Clause 15 is drafted. Okay, members. Clause 16, proposals and policies for meeting carbon budget. Clause 16 requires the Department to prepare and publish a report for each carbon budget setting out the policies and strategies that will be brought forward to deliver on it. Are you okay with Clause 16? Okay. A new Clause 16A, requirements for proposals and policies under Section 16. Members, on page 35 and 36 of the pack, you will see the new Clause 16A that has been inserted in order to take account of some of the committee's requested areas of amendment. Clause 16A requires departments when making proposals to take account of the just transition principle outlined in subsection 3, which includes the need to support the agriculture sector and other sectors likely to be most affected. Consider coordinating policies with those in other jurisdictions, including Britain, the south of Ireland and elsewhere. Consider using the supporting nature-based projects, reporting on how their proposals may impact on small businesses. Are you okay with Clause 16A as drafted by the Department? Okay. That covers some of the stuff that the committee was quite focused on. Clause 17, interim progress reporting for budgetary period. This clause requires the Department to publish a report on the policies brought forward to meet a carbon budget before the end of year 3 of each. Okay. Okay, Clause 17. Okay. Clause 18, final statement for a budgetary period. Clause 18 requires the Department to lay a report for each carbon budget with an assessment as to whether or not the emissions level has been exceeded. Are you okay, Clause 18? Okay, members. Clause 19, proposals and policies where carbon budget not met. Clause requires the Department to produce a report if a carbon budget has not been met, outlining the actions to be taken to address the excess emissions. Are we okay with Clause 19 as drafted? Yeah. Clause 20, statements on compliance with emissions targets. This clause requires the Department to prepare a compliance statement on attainment of the targets for 2030, 2040, 2050. Page 38, you will see this clause has been amended to take account of the net zero CO2 position for 2050. Committee content with Clause 20 subject to areas of proposed amendment? Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, Clause 21, climate change reporting by public bodies. Clause 21 sets parameters for a duty on public bodies to report on their climate change mitigation and adaptation activities. Pages 38 and 39 of the pack, members will see the areas of requested amendment that will now compel the Department to bring forward these regulations within 18 months of the Act being passed and requiring public bodies to consider coordinating their policies with those other jurisdictions. Members okay with Clause 21 subject to areas of proposed amendment? Okay. Clause 22, 28, reports by the Committee on Climate Change. Clauses 22 to 28 provide for the UK CCC to submit reports to the Department in respect of its assessment of delivery against carbon budgets, interim emission targets and adaptation programmes. You'll see on page 40 some minor amendments to clauses 24 and 25 to again follow through on the net zero amendment. Committee okay with Clause 22 is drafted? Okay. Clause 23 is drafted. Claire?
Thanks, Chair. Is there any way that the committee could seek further advice on whether, I mean, there's extensive sort of duties being placed on the CCC here that go beyond the current level of CCC duties under the UK legislation to do. So can we seek any further advice on whether the UK Climate Act would need to be amended to accommodate the duties that are being placed on the CCC within this bill? It's just one of those. And if the committee can be maybe given the response from the CCC as to, you know, how they feel about the duties being placed on them in this bill as well. Have we got that yet?
Nick?
Chair, certainly if the committee is minded to seek that information from the CCC, we will certainly do that.
Have enough, Chair?
Yeah, and then, you know, maybe specific legal advice again on whether if this bill goes ahead with the duties placed upon the CCC as they are, whether that would need the UK Climate Act to be amended at Westminster.
Okay. Thank you. Get that clarification as well, Nick?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on. Thank you. Committee okay with clause 24 subject to Irish proposed amendment? Okay. Committee okay with clause 25 subject to Irish proposed amendment? Committee okay with 26? Clause 26 is drafted. And is committee okay with clause 27 is drafted? And is committee okay with clause 28 is drafted? Okay. Okay, members, there's a new clause 28, and this is a consultation on the NI-based oversight. Members, on page 41 and 42, you will see the new clause 28A, which has been included to incorporate the committee's request for consideration of a locally based entity to provide advice and scrutiny on climate change action. The clause will require the department to carry out a consultation, analyse the responses, and publish a report within 2 years of the Act being passed on potential models to having a locally based body. This includes the option of a local office affiliated with the CCC. Members okay with clause 28A as drafted?
Chair.
Yeah, Claire?
Chair. Personally, I feel that it's still very weak because it's really just requires the department to consult such persons as it considers appropriate. Doesn't really mandate any action coming out of that either. You know, so for me, there's still problems there that could potentially be strengthened. I mean, I would, on a personal level, be really, really keen, you know, to maybe mandate in their civic or citizens assembly models, for example, you know, the ramifications of the change that we're going to have to start making right along, you know, every sector at every level of society. You know, people have to be brought along here and they have to understand what's going on as well. So, you know, to consult with, you know, such persons as the department considers appropriate, I feel still isn't strong enough within there.
Thank you, Claire. Philip and John. Philip?
Yeah, Chair. I mean, in relation to this, I suppose, I mean, the overwhelming response from the consultation was that people felt that there was a need for independent oversight. There was also a range of views that thought maybe the department, the DAERA department, had too much power. So, I mean, I accept that, you know, this is an issue that was raised in the consultation. It was an issue that was raised by the committee, and the department has moved some way. I accept totally what Claire has said, and I'm just making this general point on I suppose this clause and all the other clauses that we have kind of discussed, that, you know, we as a committee have raised issues, the department have come back and made amendments, but on an individual basis, you know, just because, you know, we're kind of allowing some of this stuff to go through, it doesn't mean we're 100% in agreement, or sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of myself here, that I'm 100% in agreement with this, and it doesn't restrict me as an individual MLA when this comes to the next stage of debate in the Assembly to argue for strengthening and indeed bring forward other amendments to potentially this clause and some of the other clauses that have been discussed.
Thank you, Philip. John?
Chair, also for me, I made a comment earlier on that I had issues around the governance and oversight structures suggested in this. Not that there are very many suggested in any strong terms. There's a lot of should and consultation in the bill clauses as presented there on oversight, and there's going to be consultation, accept that. There's no absolute commitment for an oversight structure with teeth, as it were, other than that the department must do a couple of actions there in parts 6 and 7. So, as previously indicated, members, if they allow this to go through today, will still be free to make suggestions and amendments at later stages.
Okay.
Chair, can I just clarify something?
Yeah, yeah.
It's going back to clause 1. Do we not need to vote today on clause 1 as well, because we're not running out of time? Would we not really need to have that done today? Could you clarify that for me yourself or Nick?
Yeah, Nick, would you have a view on that?
Chair, well, the committee's deadline for submission of its report to the Business Office is the 28th of January, and on the discussion with clause 1 there was the committee agreed to seek further amendment to clause 1 from the department and clarity around the potential all-island issues. So a potential suggestion could be that we could seek that information from the department as a matter of urgency and seek to reconvene on that specific matter on clause 1 next week, with a view to finalisation.
Because we definitely can't run out of time on it, you know.
No.
That's the concern.
Yeah. So next week would be the deadline for that then.
So can I just double check? Thanks for that, Nick. Seeking clarity on the all island dimensions is one thing, you know, but it's across the islands as well, you know. So when we know that Scotland, England, Wales, and the South have all set net zero in legislation, it's, you know, how does that impact on Northern Ireland if we set at least 82% in legislation? You know, some of the agri-food sector is an all-island economy, but, you know, when we look at all of our sectors together, how does that potentially impact, or will there be? Maybe there won't be, I don't know, but, you know, it's not just the north and south. I think it's right across these islands, because we will be a place apart.
Thank you for that, Claire. Okay, so we're coming back on that clarification in clause 1 next week. In relation to clause 28A, members okay with it, or what do you think?
Chair, just if you excuse me, Chair,
yes,
just to pick up on some of the comments that Philip and John made. Of course, there is absolutely nothing precluding individual MLAs bringing forward suggested amendments at the consideration stage to any of the clauses or provisions of the bill. We're here today as a committee to consider the outworkings of the work on our scrutiny on that and the bill as drafted before us. And of course, members do have the opportunity, if there is a dissent on particular clauses, to show that dissent through a vote if they wish to do so, and we would note that in the bill report.
Okay, so we're back to clause 28A. Members okay? Do you want to vote on it, or you want to leave it until the floor, the next stage?
Well, Chair, again, the wording of 28A is very weak, and it comes back to what John's points were making, you know, that there's a lot of the coulda, woulda, shoulda throughout this bill. You know, so I think we could be looking at strengthening it to more directive language or more affirmative language.
Do you want to maybe, Claire, same as clause 1, if it's in order, Nick, is till go back to the department and ask them to strengthen this up and come back with it, we can vote on it next week? Is that in order?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Happy enough?
Yep.
Chair,
okay.
Chair, we will of course take forward.
Sorry, Chair,
Sorry, Rosemary, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, for butting in here. Just want to follow up on Claire's issue. Yeah, Claire's we're talking about come back next week and voting. If people are still not happy, and it's going to be reversed yet again, will next week be the final week? Have to have this through this. Next week is the final week.
Yeah.
If the department
Rosemary, come out to be up there.
What happened? Yeah.
Rosemary, you're cutting out there. You're cutting out there, right, be up there.
If we come back next week, well, I'm on. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
You're sort of intermittent, Rosemary.
Can you hear me now?
I wonder, Rosemary, if you tried turning the camera off.
Because everybody's frozen on my screen.
If you try to turn off your camera, Rosemary, it might sometimes it frees up the broadband a wee bit, your bandwidth a wee bit.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Rosemary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, my concern is that we're sending this back for the department to relook at. What happens if it comes back next week and we're still not happy as a committee?
Well, Nick, I think, Nick, you keep right here, but my understanding is that effectively next week is a last possible chance, and basically it will go to a vote on what will be brought back next week. Is that right, Nick?
Chair, it'll be up to the committee to decide a way forward, and so the majority view will always take the decision. So the committee has agreed and endorsed to seek further clarity and amendment to clause 1 from the department, and to seek clarity on the potential all-island implications of having a differential target. And we will aim to ensure that the committee is provided with that information next week, if possible, and then to further consider the formal decision making on clause 1 in that context, and then it will be up for the committee to decide by majority a way forward.
Yeah.
But ultimately we will have to meet the prescribed deadline of reporting by the 28th of January.
Yeah, and committee content to take that same approach for clause 28A then as well? Is that okay? Okay. Thomas. Sorry, Thomas. Sorry. Just see your hand waving there. Go ahead, Thomas.
Chair, I don't agree with pushing all these things back again for another week and back to the department again. This has been scrutinised. We've been through this, and the committee's been through this before I came onto committee. It's been through this quite a number of times. And again, we're continuing to push this back. I believe today, given the tight time frame that we have, we need to be voting these issues, voting on these particular issues today, these clauses, and putting them through. Now, the other concern I have is that we have some members on this committee, and they're not able to get on today. There seems to be a difficulty with connections. Rosemary has a difficulty. My own colleague William Aaron has a difficulty. And I'm wondering, should we pause the committee for 10 minutes or whatever to see can we get these people back onto committee? You know, we're going through an important piece of legislation here, and we have people who's not hearing, they're frozen out, they're not on committee, and I think we need to get these people back on committee, given the importance of this legislation. So I'm just asking the question: is it should we pause for 10 minutes to see if we can get these people on the committee?
Well, if members are okay, see can we resolve the technical issues? I'm happy enough to reconvene in 10 minutes. If there's technical issues that need to be overcome. Claire?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to, I was listening to the clerk's comments on clause 1. I just want to make sure that we're seeking that clarification on the CCC's powers as well, and whether that would require a change of legislation at Westminster, or what the CCC's response to the powers conferred to them on this bill has been as well. Or,
Okay.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, William.
At long last, I was out for quite some time there, and we had a lot of difficulty getting back on, and at long last we have managed to get back on. In relation to what Claire said of the Climate Change Committee, I understood, and maybe I'm wrong, that all regions of the UK are in trouble with the Climate Change Committee. I'm not right in saying that.
Yeah.
I don't know what this issue, where the issue's coming from in that issue.
Sorry, William, if I could, in this bill, it's specifying specific duties to the CCC that don't happen in Scotland, England or Wales and the other jurisdictions. So it's just to get clarification on the CCC's feedback or comment on that, and then to seek clarity that won't require an amendment or a change of legislation at Westminster in terms of the establishment of the CCC.
I'm going to check that out myself, okay?
Thank you for that, William. Rosemary, I see you looking back in there, Rosemary. Okay.
Please, thank you. Just to say to you, I don't think it makes a difference in relation to trade between the different parts of the United Kingdom, whether there are different percentages or not. I'm aware that from what I understand, different targets, it's no issue with regard to trade. You know, if one's 82%, the other's 100%, it should make no difference in relation to trade. Or no difference either side of the border. I understand either, from what I have read in the past.
Thank you, Rosemary. Going back to Thomas' suggestion,
it's just Claire. That's I just read that.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Chair, excuse me. Chair, just to say that all 9 members of the committee are now online, and we've been able to hear Rosemary clearly there. So hopefully there are no further technical or sound issues that were occurring for some members.
Okay, we're back on board. Everybody's on board again then, right? Good. So, are members okay that we asked the
Sorry, everybody's still frozen with me.
We can hear you. Rosemary, we can hear you anyway. If that's any help, can you hear us? William, you're on mute.
Yes, I can hear you, but everybody's frozen on the screen.
I propose Mr. Chairman, we put 10 minutes.
Sorry, what'd you say, William?
I propose we stall for 10 minutes to try and get everybody on board. This is too serious a matter and too important to people that are not fully participating.
Okay.
Like, there's half an hour, there's at least half an hour I was out, and so I don't know what's happened this last half hour. You understand? So, and that's not your fault, of course, Mr. Chairman, but we had a lot of bother getting back in, but we did it at long last, you know.
Okay. Well, Clark, Nick, are you okay? We stop for 5 or 10 minutes to overcome any technical issues, then reconvene.
Chair, certainly what we'll do is we'll suspend the meeting for 10 minutes, go into closed session and seek to follow up with our Starleaf colleagues to identify if there is a problem. So I'm going to close off the red button and go into closed session shortly. We'll aim to reconvene at 11 o'clock. And perhaps within the closed session, members may be able to ask any queries or questions that they may have about the proceedings that have happened thus far. So I'm going to close off the live broadcast now.
Yeah, let us know whenever it's off, Nick.
Will do.
Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the
Emma, can you unmute me, please?
Yes, sorry, what did
Chair, that's us back live now.
Okay, members, we're just reconvened here. I just had a conversation with the, obviously there's some technical issues there, and I just had a conversation with the clerk during that period of time in relation to some procedural matters. Nick, do you want to just brief the committee here?
Chair, thank you, and firstly, apologies to members for those technical issues. We hope they've now been addressed. So, Chair, just to clarify for members, with regards to the process today, so with regards to going back to the considerations around Clause 1, given in the context of the number of weeks of informal deliberations that we have carried out on Clause 1 and the matters that have been addressed on it and the areas of requested amendment that the Department has brought back, it would be prudent if the committee would be so minded to take a view on Clause 1 as it is worded and drafted in the pack, and indeed on all clauses before it today. Should remind members that if there is a dissent or members do not agree with any of the particular clauses, they can be put to a vote and their dissent noted and will be noted in the formal record. The committee team can also note any points of issue or concern that members have with any of the particular clauses, and indeed remind members that there is nothing preventing members in their individual capacity as MLAs from bringing forward future amendments and tabling those at consideration stage. So just by way of clarity, that the advice would be it would be prudent, if possible, for the committee to take a decision on all clauses as they are before them today. But again, that does not prevent individual members from voting against the clause and noting concerns formally. And the recommendation would be that the committee reverts back to Clause 1, considers it as it is worded, and votes either for, members vote either for or against it today, and then proceed on all other clauses accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Claire?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that, Nick. So I've just one concern with that one. I mean, obviously that's the process, and of course any MLA can make any amendments on their own at consideration stage, and that's absolutely grand. And you know, the issue of voting on the clauses is not a problem, but this is really the last opportunity that we have to get legal clarification, because MLAs don't have access to that legal advice on their own. So I think that we need to be mindful of that as a committee. And if there is anything that we do need that further clarity on, this is the last chance that we can get that.
Okay, thank you for that, Claire. Okay, members, so basically, Nick, based on what you're saying then, the advice is that we proceed to vote on all of the clauses, including Clause 1 and Clause 28A so far.
Chair, that would be the recommendation, yes. And again, if members are not happy with a particular clause, we can vote. We will record that, and any particular issues of note that individual members would like to be recorded in the bill report.
Yeah. Okay. Well, members, based on the advice, the procedural advice from yourself, Nick, I'm going to then just revert back to Clause 1, and I'm just going to very clearly, we've had a wide-ranging conversation about it, and there isn't an agreement on it here. So I'm going to ask members to indicate if they are in favour of Clause 1.
What are you doing? Just put up your hand.
Show of hands.
And Chair, can I just say I've been allocated to vote for William because he's fell off again. Okay.
Yeah.
If you could count his vote too. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Chair, I've already outlined my reservations earlier, and Nick has details of those. So if that could be included, please.
Yeah.
Both the economic, sorry, Chair, both the economic and the consequential amendment there.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, can I add to that I'm happy to support that this proceeds along the lines indicated by the department, which are totally expected. I would have preferred to be got the clarifications and made the further attempts suggested earlier. I understand that some members were keen to move to a vote. I hope they understand my reasons to try and get further clarification so that this could get as widespread support as possible. But like Patsy before, I would like to be associated with those remarks about further clarifications and my own reservations in this regard. And I'm likely to make similar comments when it comes to the governance issues at the later stage, because I have serious reservations about that.
Okay. Nick, are you taking a note of Nick of how many people have voted the vote in favour?
Chair, yes, indeed, including Mr. Irwin's delegated vote to Mr. Harvey. There were 5 votes for Clause 1 and 4 votes against, and we'll note the comments by Claire and John and Patsy with regards the concerns highlighted with Clause 1, and that will be documented in the bill report.
Okay. So,
Chair.
Yes, sorry, Philip.
So, Chair, I mean, obviously, we had the discussion earlier on about Clause 1 and then went on to Clause 2 and 3. I mean, I think it's just important to make the point that, Clause 2 and Clause 3 follow on from the target setting of Clause 1. So I had reservations about the targets in Clause 1 and 2, or sorry, 1. So, I mean, that follows that now that we've actually voted in Clause 1, that, I have reservations about the targets set in Clause 2 and 3 as well, because they're determined by the overall figure in Clause 1. So, I mean, I think that should be noted as well.
Okay. Thank you for that, Philip. Noted, Philip. Nick?
Chair, yes, we will note that indeed.
Okay. Now, we had got as far as Clause 28A. So we had, right? I'm going to ask members then to vote in Clause 28A then. So those who are, bearing in mind that, that obviously it can be amended and changed when we get to consideration stage. Clause 28A, consultation on NI-based oversight.
Sorry, just a minute, Chair. Chair, can I ask, I agree entirely with views that this needs to be much expanded on. It's very watery and diluted, so we vote on it today, just basically.
Yeah.
You're putting this to vote? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. There's no, I think there's the, well, I remember it's okay that we can move on. Do we need to put the vote? Remember it's okay with it as, no, are we going to divide on it, or are we okay to let it go as it is and amend it and get to the next stage? It's up to members what they want to do. Okay.
Yep, that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, go.
Yep.
Chair, I think in the report it should be highlighted, that there was no provision in the original bill for independent oversight, and through the committee that the department have come back with this amendment. The committee potentially isn't satisfied that it goes anywhere near far enough, but it is an improvement in what was originally there.
Can that be reflected in the report, Nick?
Certainly, Chair. We will note the comments of Patsy and Philip there in the bill report.
And in relation to Clause 28A?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Okay, so we're content with that there to proceed, but with that commentary in. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, members. Okay, Clause 29, duties to ensure that targets are met. Clause 29 places responsibility on all departments to ensure that the emissions account is below the prescribed targets and to carry out their functions accordingly. You'll see on page 42, in addition to Clause 29, to carry through the CO2 net zero position for 2050. Are we okay with Clause 29 subject to the area proposed amendment? Okay. Clauses 35 to 30 to 45 cover provisions in respect of the discharge of regulations provided for throughout the bill, including any prerequisites, consultation or conditions that must be met. Technical consequential amendments have been made at clauses 30 and 33 to support the insertion of a new clause 16A. Committee contented with clause 30 subject to proposed area of amendment. Committee content with clause 31 as drafted.
Chair.
Yes, Claire?
On clause 31, and just asking questions again, there's lots of, again, it's another one with lots of vague terms in the clause, such as technology related to climate change and scientific knowledge related to climate change. I mean, do we need to request perhaps that the department publish a policy document setting out what this clause, including that terminology, actually means? For example, like, does scientific knowledge refer to AFBI, for example, or does that refer to the IPCC, or does that refer to the CCC, or does that refer to all of them together? And I think that we should maybe consider the inclusion of a duty in the bill to have that policy document setting out how the exercise of the powers in this clause and the duty requiring DAERA to exercise those powers in accordance with the policy.
Thank you, Claire. Nick, can that be brought to the attention of the department and reflected in the bill report?
Chair, yes, indeed. My suggestion there might be that we could include that as a recommendation within the committee's report for the department to take forward or consider an operational policy in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair. Okay, members. I've lost you here. I need to see you. Okay. Committee content with clause 32 is drafted. Committee content with clause 33, subject to proposed area of amendment. Committee content with clause 34 is drafted. And clause 35 is drafted. Okay, members, clauses 36 through to 39 define carbon units, greenhouse gases, measurement of emissions, and other definitions. Committee okay with 36 as drafted? Okay with 37 as drafted? 38? Okay with 38 as drafted? You're okay with 39 as drafted?
Chair.
Yes, Claire?
Thank you. In clause 39, it states that international carbon reporting practice means accepted practice in relation to reporting for the purposes of, and then A, the protocols to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or, and then goes into B, such other international agreements or arrangements as the department may specify by regulations. So for me, again, the meaning of B is again vague, and the protocols to the UNFCCC should really be enough to cover best practice. I'm not sure why DAERA should be able to pick any international agreement or arrangement by themselves then and decide to report emissions on that basis. So, I would flag up, are the committee content that there is a need for B?
Okay. Members, any particular other views on this, or what do you think? Nick, can you note that there for the report?
Chair, yes, indeed. We will note that specific comment against clause 39.
Okay. Okay, members, clauses 40 and 41 as the commencement and short title. Members okay with that as drafted? Okay. Okay, members, we've now completed our clause by clause consideration of climate change number 2 bill, and we reconvene at 3 o'clock to consider the draft bill report. Now, the meeting isn't adjourned, just reconvening after this meeting ends. Okay. Okay, thank you, members. Members, we're moving on now to item number 6 on the agenda. It's the draft environment strategy. At page 49 of your packs, our papers relating to the draft environment strategy. There's a memo from the clerk containing areas of suggested questioning that's been included to page 55, and a copy of the draft strategy is also included for ease of reference. You recall from last week's meeting, the committee requested site of information pertaining to the state of our water bodies. Page 60 is a copy of the most up-to-date Water Framework Directive statistics, which was published in December. The executive summary is included at page 102. I'd like to welcome the following departmental officials and invite them to brief the committee. And at the outset, Dave, Colin, Sarah, Simon, Silk and Richard, one thing is coming, but also want to apologise. We had a bit of an extended deliberation on our climate change bill number 2, and we had a few technical issues as well. So I want to thank you for your indulgence and for joining us here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this morning on the draft environment strategy for Northern Ireland public consultation. I'll keep my opening remarks brief, as I know members will have questions they want to put to us. Indeed, committee helpfully sent a number of questions to the department in advance of today. I don't know if the Chair, if you're content that we address those questions that have been put in advance after these opening remarks, if that's okay with you. Given the breadth of the strategy, as you say, we have a number of colleagues dialing in this morning. It's still possible that questions arise from which we don't have a subject matter expert here today, in which case, with Chair's permission, we'll revert to the committee in writing if there are any questions that are not covered by the team here. I'm joined this morning by Sarah McGuckin, who's head of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency's Natural Science Unit, Colin Breen, Director of Environmental Protection, who's been up here a few times in the past few weeks, Silke Hartman, who's from the Environment Agency's Water Management Unit, Richard Scheibel from Forestry Service, and Simon Webb, who heads up the Environment Strategy team. So firstly, to put the environment strategy in context, it is a key pillar of the Executive's ambitious green growth agenda. And as you'll already be aware, members, the green growth strategy comprises 3 elements: climate action, green jobs, and a clean environment. Sitting underneath the green growth strategy, the environment strategy seeks to contribute to all of these elements, but obviously with a particular focus on improving our natural environment and people's enjoyment of that environment. In turn, there are a number of key strategies which will sit under the umbrella of the environment strategy, including the forthcoming clean air, peatlands, biodiversity and ammonia strategies, to name but a few. The draft environment strategy was endorsed as an executive strategy at the executives meeting on the 4th of November last year, and the associated public consultation was launched by Minister Poots during his attendance at COP26 in Glasgow on the 11th of November last year. The consultation exercise itself is due to close on Tuesday, 18th of January next week, and to date we've received over 100 responses, reflecting the reviews of a wide range of respondents, including young people. We made efforts to reach young people, particularly through social media campaigns, because engaging with our children and young people and providing them with opportunities to learn about and engage with and positively shape the natural environment in future, of course, is very important. Members will probably be aware that in 2019 there was a public discussion exercise on the proposed strategy at an early stage in the process, which received over 2,500 responses. And those responses, along with inputs from across DAERA and also other Northern Ireland government departments, have helped to flesh out what's been included within the draft strategy document. I'd also like to highlight that we met with a range of key stakeholders during the process of developing the consultation, and their views and suggestions have been welcomed and helped us shape the draft strategy. During the consultation period, we've also taken part in webinars, for example, with Northern Ireland Environment Links membership, which was beneficial and met very positively, I think. The consultation was published on the DAERA website and on NI Direct Citizen Space portal. It's being promoted heavily through our social media channels to encourage as many responses as possible. As I mentioned earlier, as the environment strategy is a high-level document, much of the finer detail relating to actions and targets will be contained in the various strategies and action plans which sit under its umbrella, such as the aforementioned clean air, biodiversity and peatland strategies. We will continue to work and engage with stakeholders and use their input to help to shape the strategy in the months and years ahead. As the strategy will be adopted as Northern Ireland's first environmental improvement plan under the UK Environment Act 2021, it will be a living document and will be subject to annual reporting requirements through the Office of Environmental Protection and the Assembly, and subject to ongoing review and revision. Indeed, we've already had informal discussions with staff from the OEP regarding the draft strategy. The department aims to publish the final strategy by early spring this year, obviously subject to executive approval. So that's it by way of introduction, Chair. If you're happy, we can address the questions that the committee had helpfully sent us before in writing.
Yeah. Do you want to proceed on ahead through those, and then we'll come back with any further questions?
Okay, Chair. Yeah, that's okay. I'll go through the questions, and probably various colleagues will then chip in with responses to those. So I'll just take them in the order which they were in the letter from the clerk. So the first question was, how does the department intend to facilitate collaborative working between various local organisations that have responsibility for overseeing water quality, and how will effective interfacing be facilitated to meet the pledges pertaining to water quality in the draft strategy? I suppose in terms of strategic context, I'd just mention that when it comes to the water environment, there is already the executive's long-term water strategy with various associated governance arrangements with that that are led by the Department for Infrastructure. The 6-year review of that strategy is up during the course of this year, and DFI colleagues, along with policy colleagues from our department and relevant executive agencies such as NIEA, Northern Ireland Water, and DFI Rivers, meet at the strategic level to try and coordinate collaborative working at a governmental level. Perhaps Silke will maybe now just give a few points in terms of collaborative working at a more local level, if that's okay, Silke.
Yeah.
For this, we have the River Basin Management Plan in Northern Ireland, which you will be aware of, which the draft plan was out for consultation and contains the draft program of measures. And in order for DAERA to facilitate the collaborative working between our delivery partners and the stakeholders, we have a number of thematic focus groups. And these focus groups consist of representatives from the public sector bodies, the ENGOs, and industry bodies. So, for example, the Council, the Loss Agency, the River Trust, the Farmers Union. And these focus groups align broadly with the key sectors that are outlined in the draft program of measures. And these are agricultural, urban development, which includes the sewage-related pressures, drinking water, chemicals and pesticides, abstractions, fisheries and morphology, and then non-native species, forestry, waste and contaminated land.
Okay, thank you, Silke. If you're content, Chair, we can move on to the next of the questions the committee had sent us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the committee pointed out that a number of areas where the pledges and proposed actions in the strategy fall short of the recommendations made by the UK Climate Change Committee and policies in other jurisdictions, and specifically gave an example of the pledge to increase local woodland cover to 8.8% by 2030, as opposed to the CCC's recommendations for 30,000 hectares planted each year by 2025, and an average of 40,000 hectares per annum in the 2030s across the UK. And further, the committee pointed out that the reforesting pledges made in England, Wales and Scotland appear to be more ambitious than those outlined in the strategy. So I was going to pass across to Richard from Forest Service to just address those points, Chair.
Okay.
Oh, I think you're muted, Richard. Oh, I can hear you now, I think, Richard. Oh.
Richard, you're muted. We can't hear you. No, I can't hear you, Richard, at all. You're muted. Can't hear.
Okay, maybe Chair, I've got a few points that Richard made. I can just maybe read those out, and if needs be, we can revert to you in writing following on from that. So I think the response to that was the 2020 to 2030 Forest Draft Future Forestation target the department has to increase woodland cover by 9,000 hectares. It is based on the recommendation of the Committee for Climate Change that the committee made in 2019 in its published report, Reducing Emissions in Northern Ireland. That was in respect of the UK's fifth carbon budget. Obviously, the CCC's recommendation more recently regarding revised UK totals is in relation to the UK's sixth carbon budget, and they're expressed at a UK level. So Northern Ireland's contribution is not specified there, so that will be something that we'll be presumably working on going forward to see what that UK level total means in their most recent carbon budget at the Northern Ireland level, Chair. If there's further questions on that, if we can't get Richard sorted out technically, we'll revert to you in writing on that one, if that's okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. A follow-up in terms of the CCC recommendations was that the CCC had made ambitious recommendations for the restoration of peatlands and other jurisdictions of active programmes underway in this area. So how does the pledge set out in the draft environment strategy and the peatland strategy, which we discussed before Christmas, Chair, how does that align with those? Sarah was going to give us some input on that. Hopefully she's online okay.
Yes, thanks, Dave. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, the draft peatland strategy and the associated targets that we've included in the environment strategy reflect the UK peatland strategy, which was published in 2018, where there was a commitment that our peatlands across the UK would all be protected and sustainably managed by 2040. And so that's what we have reflected in the peatland strategy itself and the environment strategy. Moving forward from that, we are actively engaging with the CCC, particularly on Northern Ireland's contribution to the peatland restoration target, which, given the significance of our peatland resource, that we make up about 8% of the UK peatland resource, will require us to put in place an ambitious and challenging programme of peatland restoration and management up to 2050, which is what the scale of the CCC recommendations. So we are engaging with them around what the kind of interim and milestone targets should be for us to ensure that we achieve that level of peatland restoration, which will be required both to deliver climate change mitigation and adaptation and also deliver our biodiversity objectives, which for this habitat type are very closely aligned. We're very conscious that other parts of the UK have very active peatland restoration programmes in place, and we are continuing to explore those delivery models to look at what the most suitable model would be for Northern Ireland, reflecting our at times slightly different peatland habitats, but also our different land holdings. So landscape scale restoration of peatland will be somewhat more challenging, so we will have to work closely with our stakeholders and landowners on that one. It is worth noting that we are already involved in peatland restoration, peatland management through the Environmental Farming Scheme, through the Interreg 5A habitats programmes, and also some that we are doing ourselves and within our own estate. And we will also be exploring future funding options to ensure that we can achieve the scale of peatland restoration going forward that will be necessary to meet nature and climate objectives. The Peace Plus programme going forward for biodiversity, nature recovery and resilience has currently allocated €40 million to nature recovery and nature-based solutions. So we would envisage peatland restoration playing a significant part in that going forward, particularly in our cross-border areas.
Thank you, Sarah. Chair, if you're content, that the next question was around the fact that the Climate Change Committee recommended that the NI Executive bring forward a policy to set a target of 70% recycling across all wastes by 2030, and the committee noted that that wasn't included within the environment strategy. Colin was just going to give a response to that. That's okay.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So I suppose that just to cover what Dave has said, so the environment strategy reflects targets and commitments set elsewhere in a number of strategies. So the 65% target for recycling that is within the environment strategy arises from the transposition of the EU Circular Economy Package. And at the time of transposition, our minister actually did say publicly he wanted to see a higher recycling target of 70% or indeed more. But at that time, we took legal advice. Basically, in summary, the guiding principle of transposing an EU directive is that we should not go beyond the requirements of a directive when transposing it. But we should note that the 65% is a minimum target. However, I think I need to say one of the other issues has been that in Northern Ireland, we don't have any powers to set recycling targets directly. They have to be set through a new waste management strategy. So we're developing that strategy at the minute, and we will scope out exactly what level of target is appropriate at that time. And we would certainly hope to be 70% plus in line with the CCC recommendations. And just to put a positive on it, we have been doing very well in our recycling rate. So the 2020-2021 year showed that Northern Ireland was just shy of 52% recycling. Scotland and England were at 42%, and obviously Wales doing much better on around, I think, 65%. So there are positives, but we will certainly continue to push. But something that I think it's important for us all to remember as well is that once a material gets as far as recycling, too much of the value has been lost. So our big drive is really to implement a more circular economy where we focus on waste prevention, reuse, repurposing, and then when we get down the waste hierarchy to recycling, do as much as we possibly can with that. So that's me.
Thanks, Colin. There was a sort of a final question around the CCC, maybe which you could just touch on, Colin, which is why are the outlined targets and pledges in the draft environment strategy seemingly less ambitious in comparison to CCC's recommendations and policies in other areas? I think we should have
thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I suppose the first thing I'll say here is, we really do recognise the recommendations by the CCC are what is required to meet their ambitious emissions reduction target pathway, which is the at least 82% reduction to contribute to UK net zero. So we are going to continue to review and revise all the targets in the environment strategy to align with or hopefully go beyond these recommendations. But I have to say thank you to the committee for raising this and bringing it further into our consciousness that we really need to be much more aligned in this. And it's caused a lot of very good debate over the last week. But just for completeness, I think I need to add that there are areas that we need to develop a further evidence base on to assist with the correct policies. So some of these recommendations may not appear in the first iteration of the environment strategy, but as it's a living document, we will continue to try and align and go beyond all those recommendations, because what we want to do is go beyond the pathway for Northern Ireland. And so I think that's it. But again, thank you to the committee for raising that so frankly in front of us that we can now go and work on it.
Thank you, Colin. And Chair, just there was one final question in the committee's note to the department, which was around the process used and relevant benchmarking, what was undertaken to inform the draft strategy targets. I think Simon from the strategy team is going to give us a response on that, if that's okay. Oh, Simon, you're not coming through.
I can't hear you, Simon.
I think he's been infected with the same bug as Richard. So in the absence of Simon being able to get through, I'll just maybe pick that up. So, I mean, the policies and the actions and the various targets contained within the draft strategy, obviously, the strategy is specific to Northern Ireland's circumstances. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all for every region. Certainly in drafting the strategy, we were cognizant of work going on in other jurisdictions across the islands. In particular, we did explore the UK government's 25-year environment plan because that will be subject to the the consideration of the OEP in the same way that our environment strategy will be. But we also looked at other similar strategies in other devolved administrations as useful guides. So we have undertaken some benchmarking. Obviously, we're not exactly proposing the same thing in each of the policy areas as every administration, but I think as Colin set out in his response, it will be a living document, and so as the evidence base increases, both in Northern Ireland and elsewhere, and as policies evolve and we become aware of them, we'd certainly look to continue our benchmarking, and that might be reflected in updates to the strategy or in targets and metrics that are set out in some of the other sort of umbrella strategies that I'd alluded to. For instance, the biodiversity strategy will undoubtedly pick up some of the targets that are set out within the COP15 of the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is meeting this year, the global gathering on biodiversity, and the update to the waste management strategy, as Colin said, will reflect our latest understanding there. So I think that's the sort of the responses we had to the questions that the committee had sent in advance, helpfully, Chair. So I'll pass back to you for any further questions from members or clarifications. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. The number of members who want to ask questions. I suppose one of the things that perhaps I'd like to ask of you, in relation to the role of the OEP, where does the OEP fit in relation to this particular strategy, and is there representation of the North on the OEP?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So under the UK Environment Act, which when commenced in relation to Northern Ireland, we have the ability to designate environmental improvement plans as such, and those are subject to reporting requirements to the OEP, who will then assess progress against the targets and actions set out in those. So the Minister's indicated he's proposing that the environment strategy, when published in its final version, will be designated as an environmental improvement plan, EIP. And so the final set of targets and objectives within the environment strategy would be subject to, I think, annual reporting requirements to the OEP, and then subject to, obviously, the OEP's assessment of how well we were doing or not doing in terms of moving towards meeting those targets. So that's my understanding of the process. I think, as I said in my opening remarks, we've had a sort of an initial meeting with OEP. Just obviously they're not formally constituted yet. The commencement process is taking place, but they do have staff in shadow mode, so we have made contact with them just to start to understand how that process might work. And I think the OEP are hoping to give us some sort of initial informal feedback on the strategy itself. So that will give us a good steer as to whether we are going in the right direction and their views on the ambition within it.
And Dave, do you think there'll be a specific branch of OEP for the North, or what will be the model?
To be honest, yeah, I'd have to defer to others in the department who are sort of leading on the setup for that. We can certainly come back with our current understanding of the process for that. I think
sorry, Dave, I can just.
Colin, you got more information. I know the process for appointing a Northern Ireland board member for the OEP is currently running. So there will be a specific board member for Northern Ireland. As to the practicalities of the actual sort of staffing of the organisation here, Colin, you might have a bit more information on that, perhaps.
Oh, sorry, Dave. No, that's what I was going to say, Chair, is that the Northern Ireland member is the process for appointing is currently going on. But in terms of the actual mechanics of how many other Northern Ireland staff there would be or anything like that, I don't believe that's been worked out yet. But we will certainly have a Northern Ireland specific member on the board.
And do you see then, in relation to the strategy, quite rightly recognises the north-south dimension of the environment, because, as I said multiple times, the environment knows no boundaries. So I'm just thinking about what partnership, or what thought has been given to partnership arrangements, across the island to harmonise environmental regulations and standards across the island? Given the fact that we know we have two jurisdictions on the one island.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. I mean, certainly you're quite right. Most environmental media have a dimension that crosses whatever borders there might be, and water quality and air quality being just the two examples, and species and habitats being another one. Certainly, the existing structures through the North-South Ministerial Council, the Environment Sector Working Group, have been set up and are quite long-running in terms of considering where North-South dimensions are particularly important. And I know over the years, we've used that to run a number of different initiatives that in particular focus areas, whether it's clean air or waste and recycling, for example, and at a practical level, certainly when it comes to the water environment, for example, I know that there are specific working groups working north-south between the Environment Agency and colleagues in the EPA and DOCS agency alike that work very closely at a practical level. So there's a recognition there. Obviously, as the OEP comes into existence, the governance here will change somewhat, compared to the south. And I suppose, as that evolves, we'll have to work through what that means practically. But there's a very strong basis of both operational and policy cooperation, north and south, which the environment strategy will hopefully build on.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I'm going to move around the room. John? John, you're muted.
I think I'm off mute now, yeah. Chair, thank you. Can I thank Dave, Colin and the rest of the team for the presentation given as well, and the answers, and particularly the follow-up to questions previously submitted from last week's meeting around deforestation and the peatlands. And welcome that additional information, and all of us in the committee and the officials here today will know that we're going to have further conversations around those issues. So if I can hone in today on a couple of separate issues. First of all, the very clear links between agriculture and the environment, and ask therefore in relation to the strategy, was it considered that there should perhaps be more than one action in relation to agriculture included in the strategy, and that action is the publication of future agriculture policy? That's been covered already elsewhere, as far as I can see. And was it even thought of that the mention of a future bespoke agriculture bill for Northern Ireland could be considered in the strategy for discussion and further exploration, given, as I said, the close relationship between agriculture and the environment? Secondly, and separately, Chair, can I ask if there was consideration in relation to biodiversity for further consideration of protection of native species as a required action, and something that would require further work? Birds of prey, for example, and other native species that may require legal protection, but also where there could be increased engagement to ensure public awareness was maximised and that all statutory agencies were working together.
Yep, thank you, John, for that. I mean, I'll take the first question, but maybe Sarah will perhaps have some thoughts on the second one on biodiversity and native species. I mean, members will be more than aware that we're in a very busy period when it comes to strategic and policy development at the moment. So there's a lot of sort of strategies, policies being developed in parallel, which perhaps in more ideal circumstances, would perhaps have slightly different timelines. So, I mean, I think the main reason why there's only one sort of high-level action in the draft environment strategy around agriculture is because we were very conscious that, at exactly the same time as we were developing the environment strategy, the future agricultural policy framework was being developed and it is now subject to a separate consultation, which is overlapping with ours. So I think probably when it comes to the final version of the environment strategy, the agri policy consultation will have completed as well, and so that will allow us to evolve perhaps more specific actions and a bit more detail and a bit more cross-referencing between the two, because obviously, as you're rightly aware, when it comes to the natural environment, land use and agriculture is a key land use, as a very strong influence, both positive and in some cases negative. So I think you're right to point out that it's that the detail is somewhat limited at this stage, but it's really a factor of just the process of developing two very important strategies in sort of parallel timescale.
Okay.
So did you want to pick up on just John's point around further protections for native species, if that's okay?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Thank you, John. Yes, I think as we were pulling together, I suppose, the targets and the vision for the environment strategy, as Dave pointed out, we were conscious that we're in continued dialogue with our other UK colleagues and setting out the targets that are going to emerge from the CBD. And so what we had considered doing at this stage is just within the environment strategy, having the higher level targets, the apex targets that are emerging from CBD, including which in and of themselves will serve for species recovery, including having bigger, better, more connected areas for nature. And so those are the sorts of things that we will want to consider and taking forward our consideration of the 30 by 30 commitment, so that we are increasing the extent and condition and connectivity of our natural ecosystems, particularly in those areas where we have, that are most appropriate and necessary for recovering species of conservation concern. The emerging CBD targets themselves do include specific targets on species recovery and reducing the risk of extinction, and also providing greater protection for species, and they will be the elements that we will want to take forward in greater detail within the biodiversity strategy, because that will be the avenue by which we actually look at the instruments, the drivers, and the necessary safeguards to restore our existing protected sites, to extend them to align with the 30 by 30, but also very specifically on species recovery. So we will be very keen to engage with yourselves around specifically what those safeguards will need to be.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And Dave mentioned there previously the requirement that will probably arise to link the various strategies together. And I get that there's separate work to be done in relation to that, but it might be useful if, as this strategy evolves, if that required linkage can be mentioned and flagged up. In relation to species and native species protection, could I point out that the RSPB's Bird Crime 2020 report indicates a number of actions that are required. For example, collaborative working with the police in relation to wildlife protection of birds of prey in particular. And in addition to that, sort of multi-agency approach, which I think should be mentioned in any strategy, that might be worth, in addition to multi-agency action, that we mention and reference the requirement to engage with the voluntary sector and the broader environmental sector also, because there's a huge, I've said this repeatedly on various issues at committee and on different presentations, so apology for any repetition, but the untapped resource that is out there and expertise in the voluntary sector is something that the department should make every effort to embrace. And I think as well, where possible, we should include that in strategy so that can happen.
John, I would entirely agree with you. I think we already have strong partnerships and relationships with our environmental NGOs. They're very important delivery partners for us, and also their expertise and capacity, which we need to continue to enhance and increase, will be critical given the very challenging and ambitious targets that we are setting here and that we are going to have to achieve, particularly where we have already aligned the environment strategy with the overarching goals of the Convention on Biological Diversity to be nature positive by 2030 and living in harmony with nature by 2050. So we will need to have partnerships with the NGOs across government and across all sectors, because there'll be plenty for us all to do. But absolutely, the NGO sector will be critical for this.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Philip. Philip?
Yep, thank you. Just waiting to be allowed to come in. So thank you all for answering the questions that we submitted. And I don't want to kind of rehash ground that you have already covered. But I mean, obviously this is a consultation period, and I mean, I suppose if I could say the consensus among ourselves and the committee and even the media and the environmental sector and NGOs, maybe even civic society since last week, is that the bill, or the strategy rather, isn't as ambitious as perhaps we would like it to be, or think it should be. And I accept some of the answers given to our questions. I mean, I note Colin saying that it has, since last week, sparked a bit of debate and discussion within officials and the department. And I also note that he said, in terms of particularly the recycling, because it was EU law transposed, we couldn't go any higher. But I mean, the fact is that across a number of issues, particularly the issue of increasing our local woodland, that target does seem very, very unambitious here, and it is certainly unambitious when you compare it to other jurisdictions on these islands and what they're tending to do. I mean, the issue around our water quality is particularly unambitious as well. Waste and recycling I've already covered. So, Colin said that, this was going to be a living strategy and things would be looked at. But I mean, we're discussing what's in front of us in the here and now. So in the here and now, this isn't particularly ambitious. And I'm just wondering, given the discussion that you're obviously having among yourselves now, given what the committee has said and given what you've heard from outside across civic society, as a result of this consultation, is it likely that some of what we have been saying is taken on board, and that when the final strategy comes before us, that it will have more ambitious targets than currently in, and will have more of a sense of strategies how actually the targets are going to be delivered?
Yep. I mean, thank you, Philip. I mean, certainly, yeah, we were in the last week of the consultation, but we have been getting some responses in, and certainly, obviously, the questions the committee put to us are set out around, a level of ambition. So, we'll look carefully at all of the responses and see whether there's more to be done in terms of the targets. Whether that's within the final version of the strategy, or actually when we go into more detail in particular media, for instance, the biodiversity strategy might evolve that, or the waste management strategy. Colin's maybe already covered the recycling, and the rationale behind that. Some of the water quality targets, they're set out in the draft for basin management plans, as Silke said, and we'll be finalising those, separately, but linking into the environment strategy over the coming months. There's a balance in all these things around being ambitious and being realistic. And we're seeking to be as ambitious as we can be, but realistic about sometimes the natural environment does take time to recover. And so, the timescales to do that do vary depending on the particular, the particular media or the particular species we're looking at. But certainly, we're going to look carefully at all of the responses and, the overall flavour coming back, about are we being ambitious enough? Are we being more joined up enough, between this and other strategies, for instance, green growth? And so, we'll seek to make sure that the final strategy, it does evolve to take on board comments wherever possible.
Chair, if I could add, and hopefully you can hear me now. I appreciate maybe Richard still isn't maybe able to input at this stage, but I do know that the woodland cover target of 8.8%, that is essentially out of date. It's based off an archived figure of the woodland register, and we'll be seeking to update that, so that target will be more ambitious in the final version.
Can I come in here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we can now, Richard. Yes, well done.
Oh, thank you. No, well, look, that's good, and I'm sorry about whatever happened earlier. No, that's. Thank you for pointing that out. That there will be a revision, and the revision will be to just over to 9% rather than 8.8%. And I would also like to point out that Forest Service is required to agree annual afforestation targets through its business plan, which comes under the scrutiny of the committee prior to being published. And those annual business plan targets are developed with regard to a range of policies and strategies. And I would also like to point out that there is a very significant ambition in the forestry strategy, which is to achieve 12% woodland cover in Northern Ireland by 2050. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I mean, sorry, and just to come back, I mean, all of that is useful, but, sometimes, at these meetings we're being told, here's a target, but there's others have a different target. This is the environment strategy, so we want to see it in the content of this document, so and we want it to be as ambitious as it can be. So I appreciate that, there's other work ongoing, but, people are reading this environment strategy in terms of how we do our work. So I think that, we need it up to date, and B, we need it ambitious.
Yeah, thank you. You're quite right. I mean, the environment strategy needs to have the top level targets in it, and there needs to be a clear line of sight to anything in other strategies, and a consistency about them. There might be more detailed targets in other sub-strategies, but the most important ones should be on the face of the environment strategy, so that then can be, if nothing else, clear for all to read, and also for the OEP to consider progress against.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rosemary? Rosemary?
Thank you. Really, my question is just sort of a follow-on from Philip's there. It's in relation to the environmental strategy and the environmental consultation and eventual strategy, and how the other strategies are going to dovetail into them and reflect the suggestions within the environmental strategy. Will you be updating the waste management strategy, the biodiversity strategy, etc., on the recommendations that are being made through the consultation in relation to the environment strategy? That's the first question. And the second question is, you're talking about increasing your forestry, and I welcome that to 12%. Will this be with native species or forests of trees, etc.? And that's one I'm quite keen to see more of. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. I'll pick up the first question. I think probably Richard will want to just come back on the one around forestry. I mean, certainly, as I was saying to Philip at the end there, the final version, when we got final versions of the environment strategy and the green growth and other relevant strategies, whether it's clean air or biodiversity, or indeed targets in the final version of the agricultural policy, which does include environmental sustainability and therefore will have metrics in there. They all need to be aligned. Some strategies exist already, like the waste management, and so will be updated in due course, and others are being developed, and haven't yet been finalised, for instance, on the clean air side. But ultimately, when we have sort of live final versions of all of them, there needs to be a clarity of targets within them and a consistency. And as I said, it might be that the the top level targets are in the environment strategy or the green growth strategy, and then the more detailed targets that perhaps go into specific sub-policy areas are in individual strategies, but that would certainly be the intention. You're quite right, there needs to be clarity there.
Okay.
On forestry, maybe, Richard, did you want to just come back in on that one?
Yes, thank you. And first of all, the strategy embraces all types of forestry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that was good. Sorry, the strategy embraces all kinds of forestry, but I would add a couple of other caveats to that. Is that one is that the tree planting under forestry grant schemes has been almost all broadleaf, predominantly broadleaf, and of that, it's mostly native. So there's a very high proportion of the current afforestation under forestry grant schemes is with native species. Going forward, we're guided by the principle of planting the right tree in the right place for the right reasons, and if biodiversity is a primary objective, then native species are wholly appropriate. But if we have other primary objectives, for instance, supporting the timber industry in the island of Ireland, not just Northern Ireland, but specifically Northern Ireland as well, and in terms of climate change mitigation, we're also interested in planting trees that can be harvested and processed, and the land being regenerated as forest. So, and then within the overall scope of sustainable forestry, there is an increasing regard to planting native species in adjacent to watercourses and to protect water. Yeah. And adjacent to existing areas of ancient woodland sites that still have a high degree of native species biodiversity. So it's a full picture.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Richard. William?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, William, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and I apologise, I was frozen out for some time, but after a number of attempts we managed to get back on. In relation to tree planting, and I'm not sure if this question was covering that earlier, and the 8.8% or as I heard recently you said, it'd probably be increased to 9%. What in terms of hectares does that mean in real terms? 8.8%.
Well, 1% is about so let me just. It's really hard to come back with numbers just on the hoof, but the 1% of Northern Ireland is 1.4 million hectares. Mm-hmm. So 1% of Northern Ireland is 14,000 hectares. That's right. And the Forests for Our Future programme will deliver an increase in overall terms of about 0.65%. So we're coming from sorry, William?
That'll be a big challenge, I think, in my eyes, but how do you propose to deliver on that? I think that will be a very big challenge.
It's a very big challenge. It is, and it will involve land use change. But there are over 23,000 farm businesses in Northern Ireland. A very small percentage of those have actually engaged with forestry grant schemes. In fact, probably of the order of 90% haven't. So if a significant number of farm businesses came forward with a proposal to plant a very modest area, we would be able to achieve the Forest for Our Future programme, and even go beyond that.
Yeah, I'm sure you would accept it'll take quite a good incentive to realise that, I would have thought. Landowners' objectives are very important in all of this, and so it's really that the focus is on what landowners wish to do with their land. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for the update from all the officials. But I think, excuse me, it's been pointed out already that there's just such a disjointed system that we have of target setting that I suppose questions really need to be asked about if this is a deliberate way to maybe even obfuscate outcomes, because without even setting basic measurable targets within the overarching environment strategy that we're hearing will act as Northern Ireland's very own EIP. I mean, how does this strategy even meet the basic legal obligations within the UK Environment Act to have a strategy that significantly improves the environment? When I look at the targets on air pollution, they're so vague that, I genuinely believe that you can meet them all and still not see any actual improvement in air quality, because the targets here in this strategy, they're about publishing strategies, improving monitoring, improving data, but there's no actual numbers in there to measure improvement. And water quality, as I'm reading it anyway, it doesn't even match existing standards. So therefore, is this strategy really endorsing a regression from the poor place we're currently in? Are we regressing before we've even begun? The target on water quality aims for that 70% of water bodies to have good status by 2027. And the EU framework, as we've discussed, requires all member states to have water bodies at good status by 2015, which we failed to meet. And if we failed to meet that, then we could reach it by 2021, which we also failed to meet. And failing this, they're mandated to achieve it by 2027, but instead we're putting in a target of 70%. So is that good enough? And does that meet the legal requirement to significantly improve the environment? In good faith, I have no faith in the department given their track record. There's a lot of aspirational words in the strategy, and while aspirational words are really lovely to have, they're just not good enough when the track record is measured against that. And on page 72 of the strategy, states that for DAERA wants to demonstrating its commitment to leading by example, is seeking to become the world's first government department to achieve eco-department status. And I've quoted before, and I'll quote it again, the words of Professor Stephen Emerson, and he's worked with regulatory agencies across the world in Ecuador, Colombia, Madagascar, Indonesia, and he's openly said that he's never interacted with a regulatory agency that's so incompetent as the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. And that's not personal to any individual, but perhaps the system that we create. So I suppose I'd be looking at what sanctions would we be facing. Would it be sanctions against the Northern Ireland Executive, against the Department, or against the UK Government? If we, for example, missed the WFD targets, and when we miss these targets in this environment strategy, what sanctions will we face? Is the answer none?
Okay, thank you, Claire. Just trying to pick up some of the questions within that. I mean, I suppose ultimately, it'll be down to the OEP to determine whether we've met the legal requirement and the Environment Bill for a significant improvement in the environment, or the precise wording that's set out there. The OEP will take a view on that, and it'll be up to them to decide have we met that, and if we haven't, what sanctions need to be taken, and if sanctions are necessary or appropriate, then who they are levied against, which department or departments are responsible for that. So I think that's really something for the new governance arrangements to start to determine as they settle in. Certainly, I mean, there are a couple of other points out. Maybe let Simon to come in on the specifics of the eco department and what that might involve. But are the targets clear enough, or will they be deliverable? Well, certainly, I think the OEP will have commentary on that if they don't think that they are, set out with enough clarity. So on the water side of things, you're right that the Water Framework Directive talks about 100% good status, and the department recognises that is ultimately the legal requirement for us to move towards. The 70% is seen as an ambitious and working target that will drive the necessary changes to move us in the right direction. We've just come out of the EU, but the targets originate from the EU, and there's I think quite a wide recognition across different European countries that the number of river basin cycles to get towards that status is going to perhaps need to be stretched further, because I think all countries are struggling to meet 100% good status. On the air quality side of things, you're right that at the moment, the environment strategy perhaps doesn't have explicit targets in there, because we are still working up the clean air strategy, which will be more specific around that. The UK Environment Act, I think it does allow the department to designate more than one plan as an environmental improvement plan. The environment strategy will be the key one. But ultimately, if there's a feeling that, other strategies have targets that ought to be subject to reporting to the OEP, then we can designate additional plans. So, it's not a once and for all designation, I don't think, so that there are opportunities there to where targets are still evolving or perhaps haven't been finalised, to make sure that they're not lost, and that there is the robust mechanism for, for good governance. Simon, did you sorry?
No, so do you feel then that 70% target, for example, is a regression from where we are at the minute?
Well, our current state is, Silke might have the details of the numbers. I think our most recent assessment, is we're not at 70%. So, moving towards 70% would involve a significant degree of improvement and investment across a number of sectors, and getting to 70% would be a significant improvement in the water environment.
And does the OEP have enforcement powers?
My understanding that it does have, it will have enforcement powers. Once in place, that it will be able to take enforcement. That the precise nature of it will depend on the circumstances, I would imagine.
Okay.
Simon, did you want to say anything about the Claire? You'd mentioned the Eco Department. We could maybe just provide a little more detail about what that concept is, just to give you a little more information.
Certainly, Dave. Thank you, Claire. Yes, the Eco Department concept sits under the International Foundation for Environmental Education. They, of course, have the very highly successful Eco Schools and Eco Campus programs. So it's a very strict, rigorous accreditation process, which will require the department to subject itself to a whole host of actions and measures. So provided we get that up and running, that means DAERA will achieve the world first in that programme, as you say, being the first government department to subject itself to that process. So it isn't just a label or slapping a new title on the department. It is an actual formal, rigorous process, which will mean meaningful changes in how the department functions and its environmental performance.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Claire. Patsy. Oh, sorry. William, you still there? William, you still on board? William, maybe just off. Patsy. Patsy?
Sorry, somebody had me muted there just. My apologies for missing part of the meeting there, but I had to nip out for another meeting that had been scheduled for me as well. Could I just move to the issues around peatlands now? Obviously, in an area like where I would represent, turf is cut both commercially and indeed cut by individuals for heating their homes. Can you explain to me just in what way, or what's the department's thinking around how we can move to, how we can, if you like, balance those two demands or two issues, and how we can move along, and how people might be supplemented or incentivised or encouraged to restore those peatlands in circumstances where they may still have the pressures to cut turf, whether commercially or to heat their homes.
So, thank you, Patsy. I mean, we certainly recognise, within the Peatland strategy and the implementation plan which we're developing, that there are some complicated issues there. Where people have historically, have turby rights and have cut peat for heating of homes, and that in the longer term, the need to perhaps move away from that for climate and biodiversity and maybe other reasons is going to be complicated. So I think that sort of assessment is going to take a while to work out the best mechanism for doing that, and how we put together, incentives and support, whether that's through the environment strategy or whether it's through the energy strategy, which is also looking at, heating and energy needs for rural areas, or the green growth strategy as well. Certainly a need to be joined up in that respect, to make sure that, affordable options are there for home heating, going forward, both in energy and environmental terms. At a commercial level, when it comes to peat extraction, obviously there's work on alternative growing media, and what can be done to support that for the industry. I know that CAFRE involved in research around that, to ensure that there are the right alternatives that still deliver the right performance are available as well. Whether Sarah, does anything sort of around the restoration side of things and support around that? You perhaps mentioned earlier. I'm not sure whether you were on the call at that point, Patsy, but you might want to just add something, perhaps, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Patsy. Thank you, Dave. Yes, this one will be a complicated issue to address, because when we refer back to the CCC recommendations, they're very clear in terms of UK-wide recommendations, that they would want to see a ban on peat extraction and a ban on burning of peat, and a number of things around, land use policy. And I think that's just something that we're going to have to work very closely with landowners on. Again, some people have turby rights maybe where they don't even have ownership rights. So there's legally, it's quite a difficult issue. So there'll be a number of considerations there. But I think the key thing is for us to engage more fully with landowners who are managing our important peatland habitats in a range of ways, just to see what are the real barriers to really achieving, getting us back to as far as possible intact bog, and getting us back to having peatlands that are abundant in peat-forming species, so that we can get the biodiversity and the climate gains there. But really starting to see what would help. Is it more knowledge transfer? Is it better understanding? Are there sufficient incentives, or are there still too many disincentives? So I think there'll be a number of things that we'll need to do that'll be a critical part of moving forward with the implementation plan for the peatland strategy.
And particularly too, the use of the peat and its extraction process commercially for, say, the likes of market gardening, all those host of things, which are, if you like, at the other end of the environmental chain.
Yes, and I think there will have been some significant feedback as part of the consultation on the peatland strategy from the horticulture industry, particularly where farms are wanting to do a bit of diversification, which is what we're all keen to see as well. But it's just trying to see in the time frames we're talking about what other alternatives there are, but really kind of working with industry on that.
Yeah, I think
thanks very much, Sarah.
Maybe just add to that, Patsy. So just to finally, when we were meeting with you before Christmas on the peatland strategy, I think we'd set out that we would be setting up some structures around implementation, but particularly an external stakeholder group that would seek to get representation from any all those affected, whether it's landowners, the farming community, the horticulture sector, NGOs or the like. Just reckon that they're recognising that they're complex issues we need to work through and to make progress on.
Okay. Right, thanks.
Sorry, Chair.
That's right. Thanks, Dave. And Thomas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation today on this issue. Again, with regards to the peatland strategy, and back to following on from what Patsy has been talking about there, and I heard you say about the banning on, there would have to be a ban on extraction of peat, perhaps, maybe, and this type of thing. I don't foresee that you're going to get that. You may well get it whenever it comes to the reduction of putting peat out in bulk, for example, somebody cutting it for a business or whatever and cutting a huge amount of peat. But I think for the individual person in the rural area, and that's what they've done all their lives, they've cut peat to keep the house warm or whatever. I can't foresee that there's going to be that you're going to get support for a ban on that to stop that individual from cutting his turf for his day's cutting or 2 days cutting, whatever it has been for that particular year. But surely one of the things that is causing much more damage to our peatlands than cutting turf or cutting peat is the wind farms. And we take a look at our peatlands right across take West Tyrone as an example, and we look right around our peatland areas in West Tyrone, and we see the huge cutouts that has been done within our peatland areas to put in the huge concrete foundations for the wind turbines to go on. We see the huge roadways that's been made right through our peatlands to access this. Surely that has caused much more problems than extracting peat has ever done to our peatlands. So, how do you propose to address that particular issue? Because to me, that's where if we're talking about restoring our peatlands, well, that is what's causing more damage to our peatlands than for some individual extracting a few days cutting of peat for their heating their homes.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I mean, certainly, the complicated issues at play here when you're looking at climate change objectives and need for more renewables, but making sure you got the right right sort of renewables in the right places. I think probably the way that certainly the department, perhaps through NIA and DAERA, might have a view on this, seek to mitigate impact on peat from any wind farm development is through the planning process. And that is currently the main route that we use, and that has its own challenges. But that's a primary route we would look to use. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that the Department for Economy is developing their energy strategy, and the role of renewables and what type of renewables is part of that. That policy development, and we have been feeding into that process as well. Is there anything specifically you want to add, Sarah, in terms of the operational level, how we try and ensure that wind farms on peat are not having a significant impact?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. The issue of wind farms in the uplands, is a tricky issue for us. But again, we have very extensive engagement and consultation with the planning authorities and with applicants on this. They are generally very lengthy consultations because there's a lot to consider, and there's a lot of mitigation to consider where we feel that it may be appropriate or could be accommodated. And even alongside where there has been wind farms put in place, there are long-running management plans and commitments on the part of wind farms to ensure that they're minimising their impact. But again, as we look across the piece in terms of the planning landscape as well, I think this is something that we will have further discussions with planning authorities just to see what can be accommodated. Because I think our uplands are under a lot of pressure, and we will rely on them heavily to deliver us a lot of ecosystem services. So I think it's looking across the piece and having a balanced approach to all of this. Some of the pressures are very localised. Others are much more widespread, but it's in all of our interest to have our uplands much more resilient. But again, any of those significant applications will be subject to a lot of consultation and scrutiny to minimise any impacts.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah and Thomas. Okay, members, don't have any other people down to ask any questions, so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you this morning, Dave, Colin, Sarah, Silk, Richard, and Simon for your presentation and taking the questions. And again, just once again, apologies for us running a wee bit over schedule. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
No problem. Take care now. Right, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, members, I'm going to move on here now with, get my camera set right here. Move on here to item 8 on the agenda. It's a written briefing. It's written briefing, legislative consent motion for NI pet abduction offence. It's page 188 of your packs. Papers relating to a proposal to extend an offence for pet abduction locally via legislative consent motion. Briefing paper by the clerk, which sets out the background to the Minister's request, is page 193. By way of background, members, you may be aware reported incidents of pet theft have increased during lockdown. These cases are currently addressed via theft legislation, which essentially considers pets as the property of their owners. However, there is a view that this does not sufficiently recognise animals' sentience and the emotional impact of both animals and owners whenever a pet is taken. There have therefore been calls to introduce a new penalty to recognise the emotional impact of these cases. Such an offence has been proposed to the Animal Welfare Kept Animals Bill, which is currently proceeding through Westminster. The committee has been asked for consideration in principle for extension of such an offence locally. The offence as drafted covers England only and is subject to some further areas of amendment. Once this is finalised, the Department is bringing forward similar wording to cover local matters. If this proposal is endorsed by the Committee and Executive, we will have further opportunity to consider and scrutinise implications in advance of a legislative consent motion. Members, any comments or anything they want to raise in relation to this particular one here? No. Okay.
Chair.
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah. Who's that speaking up there?
Chair, excuse me. Sorry, it's Chair.
Oh, sorry.
It's Nick here.
Sorry.
Chair, just to advise that the officials are online for the oral briefing on the avian flu update. So we could now perhaps revert back to item 7 if members have no further questions on item 8.
Okay, is that okay, members? Okay, members, so right to the Department indicate that the committee is content in principle for extension of pet abduction events to here through an LCM to an animal welfare bill. Okay, members, I'm going to just revert back now. We have the officials online for the oral briefing, which is an update on the avian influenza. I want to thank you for coming along here. We have, you'll recall on the 9th of December, we received a briefing from the department on the avian influenza outbreak, a number of calls of infected flocks. They're run up to Christmas. Can I request the department provide regular updates on the situation? Page 181 of your pack, you'll find a written update by the department, and at page 185, you'll see a response to the questions we raised to the department following the last briefing. I'd like to welcome by Starleaf, Jim Lee, Deputy Director of Animal Welfare, Animal Health and Welfare, Gemma Daly, Senior Principal Veterinary Officer, and Julian Henderson, Senior Principal Veterinary Officer. I want to thank you for coming here this morning, and again I want to extend our apologies and thank you for your indulgence because we are running a little bit late. So thank you very much for joining us here this morning, and if you get the opportunity to give us a bit of a briefing here, members may want to ask some questions thereafter. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to you and members of the committee. We'd like to thank you for this opportunity to update you today on the current avian influenza outbreak across the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, and importantly, the developments since our last appearance on the 9th of December. As you've mentioned, Chair, I'm joined today by Senior Principal Veterinary Officers Gemma Daly and Henderson, who have responsibility for managing outbreak both centrally and in the field. And we will answer any questions the committee members may have at the end of these opening remarks. You'll be aware that an avian influenza prevention zone has been in place across Northern Ireland since the 17th of November 2021. The measures in this avian influenza prevention zone include stringent mandatory biosecurity measures to help prevent the spread of the disease from wild birds or another source to poultry. In addition, a mandatory housing order was introduced on Monday, the 29th of November, and this further disease prevention measure legally requires all birds to be housed or otherwise kept separate from wild birds. Housing orders are also in place across Great Britain and the Republic of Ireland. As of today, Chair, the UK is on day 79 of this outbreak. To date, 74 cases have been confirmed across Great Britain since the first confirmed case in England on the 26th of October. In addition, there have been over 400 confirmed cases detected in wild birds across Great Britain. And just to note, when I last addressed the committee on the 9th of December 2021, confirmed cases across Great Britain stood at 38, and the wild bird confirmed cases was just over 180. In respect to the Republic of Ireland, as of today, avian influenza has been confirmed at 6 premises, 5 in County Monaghan and 1 in County Cavan. The disease control zones for 4 of these cases extend into Northern Ireland, and we have established, in conjunction with our colleagues in the ROI, corresponding zones as required. The Republic of Ireland have reported 60 cases in wild birds to date. Across Northern Ireland, as of today, there have been 5 confirmed cases. In order of confirmation, these cases were located at Knocknacloy, Ruckshane, near Armagh City, Coke, and Ballinderry. Culling and preliminary cleansing and disinfection has been completed at all sites. Disease control zones were established around each infected premises, and significant work is ongoing to ensure these disease control zones are progressed effectively and efficiently in line with established protocols. It's important to note that excellent progress has been made, and by Sunday, the 16th of January, this Sunday, only one 10k zone will remain in Northern Ireland around IP5, Ballinderry, along with a portion of an overlapping zone from IP6 in the Republic of Ireland. Full details of the scope and measures required within these zones and maps are available on the DAERA website and include the requirement that all moves of poultry, eggs or meat within, into and out of the zones are required to be licensed. A movement licence centre was established on the 1st of December in Strabane DAERA Direct Office to facilitate this, and given the number of outbreaks, a further satellite licence centre was established at Enniskillen DAERA Direct Office to support the licensing. As previously discussed, DAERA collects dead wild birds for avian influenza surveillance purposes to help us understand if and when the virus is present in Northern Ireland and how it is distributed geographically. It was clear that the native wild bird population had been affected, and as a result, DAERA took the decision on Monday the 13th of December to cease testing. However, Veterinary Service have continued to receive, record and respond to callers with dead and sick wild bird reports as part of our disease monitoring. As previously noticed, Veterinary Service Animal Health Group's primary function is the control of avian influenza in poultry flocks and is not involved in control of the disease in the wild species. We have been working closely with the local councils, in particular Belfast City Council, whom we met with on Thursday 9th of December in relation to this matter. And we facilitated a further meeting on Wednesday the 15th of December 2021 with all councils and a wide range of public bodies and civil service departments to discuss the advice and guidance on dealing with the issue of sick, dying or dead wild birds on their land in conjunction with the Public Health Agency. Whilst I have noted that Veterinary Service is responsible for the control of avian influenza in capped poultry flocks, it should be noted that DAERA, through the NIEA, participates in monthly counts of wandering water birds, and dead or dying birds are noted and reported as they may indicate the presence of disease or other conservation issues. I have been informed by my colleagues in NIEA that from a Northern Ireland perspective, there are currently no concerns about the impacts on conservation status of individual bird species here. Long-term population trend data are available for wintering water birds in Northern Ireland, and it is unlikely that any impact from this strain of avian influenza will register as a sustained downturn in numbers. The Public Health Agency has advised that human infections with avian influenza are rare, as it is primarily a disease of birds, and the risk to the health of the general public is very low. However, as you will be aware, there has been one confirmed avian influenza human case detected in England. This is a very rare event which occurred in unique circumstances of sustained exposure in close proximity to infected birds. The individual has remained well throughout the investigation and monitoring period. The Food Standards Agency has made it clear that avian influenza does not pose a food safety risk for UK consumers. Properly cooked poultry and poultry products, including eggs, are safe to eat. Here, I will now outline some of the key work areas across the department that we have progressed, including field activity, trade, licensing and testing delivery, to highlight the breadth of the work that has been undertaken to respond effectively to this outbreak in the weeks just past. The confirmation of notifiable disease in Northern Ireland can have a significant effect on exports. As international trade is a reserve matter, DAERA is working closely on a daily basis with DEFRA market access colleagues to ensure trade with third countries is maintained where possible. Trade colleagues are supporting industry on a continuous basis to understand the restrictions and timing related to these being lifted. There has been extensive field activity carried out by DAERA staff undertaking disease control activities, with staff working evening and weekends over the holiday periods to ensure the disease control measures are taken as quickly as possible. This work has included taking control of infected sites following disclosure of disease, the carrying out of culling and disposal of birds on site, preliminary cleansing and disinfection, carrying out clinical visits and sampling of report cases and high-risk trace flocks, and undertaking surveillance visits and surveillance telephone calls to all flocks within the 5 disease control zones. Eradication teams have worked under difficult conditions on the infected premises to ensure humane culling of the infected birds and disposal of carcasses as quickly as possible. Teams of on average 25 have been required for each commercial site, 25 staff that is. The resource available for field activities has been impacted by both the stand-down period requirements between site visits and the need to retain a cohort of available clean vets to attend report case premises and to carry out the subsequent surveillance and licensing visits. Disease surveillance activities are initiated with the report of a case. There have been 23 reports for investigation in kept birds since this outbreak began in Northern Ireland. And for each report case, at least 3 veterinary officers specialised in episodic disease involved in initial assessment, decision and deployment of staff. Officials have conducted over 130 clinical visits and made telephone calls to almost 2,000 sites between the 2nd of December 2021 and the 10th of January 2022. Moving to our lab colleagues, during this current AI outbreak, AFBI have received 38 separate submissions and tests have been conducted on over 280 birds as part of tracing and epidemiological testing on pre-cull samples. Testing is ongoing on over 230 submissions. And AFBI will be further involved in testing to facilitate the restocking of the infected premises as we move through recovery. The Movement Licence Centre, which was established in Strabane, have issued over 500 licences for the movement of live birds, eggs and poultry litter. Before licences are issued, clinical visits are required 24 hours before the movement of live poultry. In addition, the licensing of table eggs requires verification of production records. The process is demanding on resources and additional support was required, hence the setup of a satellite licence centre in Enniskillen. To meet the demand and to support the industry, staff volunteered to work evening and weekends, and a 7-day service continued to be provided, which included service provision over the Christmas and New Year holiday periods, specifically to support the broiler industry moves to slaughter. At this stage, a detailed breakdown of costs associated with the current ongoing outbreak is not available. However, to date, approximately 150,000 has been spent on hiring of equipment, culling, disposal, cleansing and disinfection at the affected sites. It should be noted that this figure does not include staff costs, including overtime, or indeed compensation, which is currently subject to the ongoing valuation process. As part of our stakeholder engagement and customer delivery, ensuring that the correct information is available for industry as soon as practicable, we have also developed a new online DAERA Avian Influenza hub at Pace. This online hub, available through the DAERA website, has improved signposting to the latest information and provides guidance to help flock keepers take action to protect their flock. It includes a new downloadable biosecurity checklist developed in conjunction with the British Poultry Council, ease of access to the DAERA Avian Influenza map viewer, which details the declared zones, as well as links to other government websites. The hub also provides advice to the general public on a range of topics, including wild birds and bird gatherings. We have developed a comprehensive and sustained communications plan across both traditional and digital channels. This plan is targeted at our stakeholders and the media to ensure up-to-date advice and messaging is given out on a frequent basis. Throughout the 79 days of the outbreak, we have posted almost 100 messages online, generated over 100 press articles, and recorded over 200,000 impressions on social media. The messaging is continuously refreshed with new information, graphics, and videos. This comms plan will continue as long as the threat of AI remains. We have a range of new, refreshed communications planned over the coming weeks, aiming to keep interest levels high among our stakeholders. We are very aware of the potential for and want to avoid complacency in relation to this, given the stable position that we find ourselves as the threat of avian influenza remains. Officials continue to meet frequently with industry stakeholders to engage closely in regards to this current AI outbreak, heighten awareness, and deliver key messages on how to protect the Northern Ireland poultry flock from further avian influenza incursions. Furthermore, Minister Pitts has met with industry stakeholders, highlighting the importance of good biosecurity and the need for all organisations involved in the poultry industry to take additional steps to ensure compliance across the entire sector. We meet daily with our colleagues across the UK to discuss our approach to this outbreak, and in addition, we meet twice weekly and more frequently as required with our counterparts in the Republic of Ireland. Minister Pitts has also met with his counterpart, Mr McConlogue, to discuss this outbreak and support the ongoing collaboration between our jurisdictions. And finally, Mr Pitts also made an urgent statement to the Northern Ireland Assembly on the 14th of December 2021 regarding this current outbreak of avian influenza. Chair and members, thank you for your time, and we're happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Jim, for that very comprehensive briefing. There's a couple of members who want to ask questions here, and I suppose we'll just kick off. Just one of the things that was highlighted at the last briefing was there's some issues with the hotline. Jim, has there been any further developments to that, or any further complaints about the hotline?
So can you hear me okay, Chair?
Yeah.
So following our meeting, yes, we did take those comments on board in relation to the DAERA helpline and reporting wild and sick birds. And maybe just hand over to Gillian, who could perhaps provide an update on that. You're on mute, Gillian.
Gillian, you're still on mute.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bizarre. Well, concerning the hotline, shortly after our last meeting, we made the decision to cease wild bird collections for surveillance. We reconsidered the messages on the hotlining and the routing of referrals. At that point, we made the decision to, as I said, cease the collection. So, pretty much the hotline messages now are advising people to contact landowners with regard to the birds notified. And we don't collect them anymore. But yeah, we did revise our messaging at the time.
Thank you. And see, in relation to the issue of compensation, do you have any assessment of the projected level of compensation that will be paid to owners of culled birds, and has the department taken steps to secure the appropriate level of compensation given the serious economic impact it will have for business owners?
I'll take that one, Jim, or do you want to?
I can start off, yeah.
Okay, go on ahead.
Sorry. So yes, Chair, in relation to compensation, we have been working with all the affected flock keepers very, very closely. And we have agreed the compensation levels for 3 of the sites. The sort of total for that at the minute is sitting around 160,000 for those 3 sites. I suppose we have some ongoing discussions with 2 of the sites, and we'll work through that closely with those site owners. So that is a sort of a broad figure at the minute. In relation to securing the allowance of compensation at the minute, that is being met within departmental budgets currently. But should we need to seek further assistance from the executive, Minister Pitts is willing to engage with his executive colleagues on that. But at the minute, current levels are within the DAERA budget.
Thank you. Philip, are you looking in there? No.
Chair, sorry, I actually had indicated to command. I was indicating to command to talk on the previous issue, so I just get in too late. I'm okay.
Okay, right, no problem, Philip. Claire? Claire?
I'm here, Chair. Just take 3 seconds. Sorry for the mute to come up.
You're okay.
And thanks very much, guys, for the update there as well, and for coming back to us. But I want to go back to the timeline there. We know then the Belfast City Council first contacted the department on the 26th of November. A meeting between yourselves and that council happened then on the 9th of December. And I think that with all local councils, a meeting happened on the 15th, which I think was the day after we last met. So I just wanted to ask if there was any update on those meetings and if any actions have been identified to ensure perhaps a quicker, more robust communication with local authorities in cases of another future outbreak among wild birds or other emergency situation. And then I also note that councillors at Belfast City Council received a communication on Tuesday then from the department says that the council officers have liaised with DAERA, who've advised that they've activated emergency structures in response to the avian influenza outbreak. And in terms of animal welfare, it's DAERA that takes the lead regarding farm animals. Councils take the lead on companion animals. PSNI take the lead on wildlife crime, but that no agency has any specific role on the welfare of wildlife. So I wanted to ask if that's the case in other jurisdictions as well, and how is it so that nobody has the specific role for welfare of wildlife here in Northern Ireland? And it leads me into other things, but I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, Claire, that's great, thanks. And just in relation to the timeline, the meeting that we had with Belfast City Council was on the 9th of December. That was the afternoon of our appearance, our last appearance with yourselves, and a very useful meeting actually. And from that meeting, Belfast Emergency Planning Group colleagues, helped us arrange then a further meeting with all local councils on the 15th of December, as you have pointed out, but also with much wider attendance from any public body that wished to attend that had the management of land as their responsibility. We put that out through all the civil service departments and the wider arm's length bodies, and I think there was a very wide attendance of, I can't remember top of my head, there was 70 or 80 organisations represented in that. And through that discussion, we had a good discussion around avian influenza and a good discussion around the responsibilities for landowners, and some of that was based on the need for them to have appropriate risk assessments in place for their staff, not just for the handling of dead wild birds, but the handling of any dead wild animal that they may find on their land. That there's a risk from there's a risk from other dead wild animals and people handling them. So following that meeting, we did have one or two organisations picked up separately, individually with us about taking forward risk assessments, but we've had no further issues raised by the councils or indeed any other public agency in relation to what their responsibilities might be in relation to dealing with dead wildlife, or in this case, dead wild birds on their land, and what precautions they should take. Picking up on the welfare element, so my understanding is what you've stated is accurate, and the welfare bill sits a little bit outside my expertise, but the welfare bill requires people of animals that are kept or under the care of an individual to take the appropriate actions that are contained within the welfare bill. By deference, then, that there is no requirement for any organisation or any person to be held responsible for the welfare of a wild animal.
And is that the case in other jurisdictions, or is that just here?
So that would be my understanding across the UK and the Republic of Ireland, but I will come back and confirm with the committee on that in writing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who we've got here now? John? John?
Yeah, thank you, and can I thank the officials also. Back to the issue of stakeholder engagement and the coordination of actions with local councils and any other statutory agencies that might have to be involved. Can I ask, in light of what happened and the timelines that have been illustrated to us, has there been any review of protocols and contingency measures that are in place? And if there hasn't been a review at this time, is there likely to be one?
Okay, I can start off. John, I'll probably hand over to Gillian just to provide a bit of the detail as well. But one of our main actions coming out of any outbreak is to think about the recovery and exit strategy, but also importantly is any lessons learned. And we have kicked off lessons learned in relation to this outbreak across a wide range of areas, and obviously communication with public bodies, which we have improved and which we have improved on our website, is one of the key areas that we'll be taking forward. I suppose in relation to the timeline on communications with Belfast City Council, I suppose the gap, and being upfront about the gap, was whenever we had a positive sample on the 24th of November, we did update our website, and we did inform stakeholders immediately through our Avian Influenza stakeholder group, but did not make that direct contact, and that wasn't made until the 29th of November. So that's probably an area where we need to review that and address that going forward, John.
Okay, Jim, thanks. Appreciate being so candid on this issue, and I know that these are require quick actions, and it's a reactionary situation to be in. I fully understand that, and judgments happen to be made very, very, very swiftly. But in relation to interaction with councils in particular, but perhaps other departments and other public bodies also, can consideration be given to the impact on the community of the closure of local facilities such as public parks? The waterworks has been a very good example of that. And the knock-on effect that might have in relation to public health and well-being also, because I think that's relevant in this instance. Not to, for a moment, underestimate the seriousness of the situation, but some of the outworkings of this have an impact on the wider community.
Yes, and John, I suppose we're very conscious of of the impact of decisions that are taken. I suppose just note that those decisions are in the remit of the local councils that are involved, yeah, or the landowners. I mean, DAERA would happily be able to provide animal health advice, and the public health agents would provide the public health advice, and it's for the landowners to make decisions based on that advice, mm-hmm, and their assessment of the risk, both to the public but also to their staff. And I think but from our perspective, we all want to see public areas kept open and available for the public, depending on the risk, of course.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Patsy?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, and thanks to everybody for attending to brief us here today. I'm probably the only one online here at the minute that I actually live within probably about 2 kilometres of both outbreaks. One that's well, the address is given as Cove, but it's not really from where I come from, and the other one, Ballinderry. But can you outline to me, please, in a wee bit of detail? Unfortunate, very unfortunate. I know both families very well. It is very unfortunate for them that they've been landed with this sort of situation. But just specifically on the well, there's two elements to it. If you could outline to me just in a wee bit more detail the implications of the 10K zone, but specifically in regard to the compensation for the loss of their flocks in both instances, is that processed with pretty much haste? Because obviously they're going to be down money and some of them in advance of Christmas there, whenever they would have been probably at optimum need. Can you give me a wee bit of advice around that too, please?
Okay, Patsy, I can pick up a little bit on the 10K zone and some of the restrictions on that, and then I'll maybe pass over to Gemma on a little bit on the compensation and the process that's been taken forward with both flock keepers, if that's okay. So I think, as we previously discussed, the disclosure of infection and confirmed infection on premise, starts a process. And the department's main role here is that we want to stop this spreading to other poultry farms. We recognise that the poultry industry is very integrated across Northern Ireland, across all the islands, and we need to take control very, very quickly in relation to movements. So we set up a 3K protection zone and a 10K surveillance zone. And really, without getting into too much detail, the measures in the 3K zone are more stringent and slightly less stringent in the 10K zone. But in the main, most moves require a license. Most moves of poultry, eggs, litter, etc., from poultry farms or to poultry farms within those zones require a license, and that needs to be applied for to the movement license. So it is quite a burden on the industry, and there is a responsibility, obviously, on the department then to move through the process and do our required surveillance within those zones within the minimum time frames to ensure those zones can be merged and lifted. And we have progressed that very well, particularly over the holiday period, to the point that come this Sunday there will only be one 10K zone remaining in Northern Ireland, and a portion of the 10K zone that extends from the ROI, which is taking up significant work over the past few weeks. So I hope that answers a bit about the zone. I'm happy to move on to compensation.
Okay.
If you're happy, Patsy.
Yep, thank you.
And then, so I suppose in relation to compensation, the basic principle is that the department is required to pay compensation for birds that we cull. For birds that are culled at our direction to mitigate for onward disease spread. And those that value of compensation is based on tables that are provided and agreed across the UK, and I think our colleagues in ROI use similar tables. And the amount of birds to be paid for is agreed between the vet on the ground and the flock keeper. But I'll let Gemma pick up a little bit, maybe on the process and the detail there, if that's okay, Patsy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Patsy. Everybody hear me okay?
Oh, aye.
So yeah, Patsy, so compensation, so certainly we're very conscious of the impact on the flock keepers and that obviously loss of income and the need to get obviously bills set and be paid, and compensation payments trying to get through as quickly as possible. So as Jim's said there, so we have set poultry valuation tables that we use, and these cover sort of the main categories of birds, commercial birds available. Now in some circumstances either have a unique setup or we don't have a valuation table available for, and we've a separate process to try and get a table established for those particular flocks, or there might be also certain elements on the farm again that we don't have a table for. So Jim said we cover obviously compensation for birds, but also any other material that we deem as an infection risk we would also compensate for on site, so eggs and potentially meal, depending on the setup on the farm as well. So there's a few things to agree. Certainly in those premises where we have a table and we can agree valuations quickly, we'll process those as quickly as possible. Some will remain outstanding if there's issues again where we're trying to establish special sites to get a separate table. But again, if there's things potentially we could have valued separately, such as eggs or meal, we would try and process those payments through as soon as possible. But no, we're very aware of that, Patsy, and we certainly will push on with valuations. That's our priority. The vet on site pre-cull assesses the numbers on the premises, and we'll jot those numbers down on our investigation form, and that's immediately relayed to our evaluation team, who look at the numbers, look at the tables, highlight any areas that we would need special assistance with or special tables developed, and that process is kicked off from early on in the process. So we're very conscious to get those compensation payments processed as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks for that, Gemma.
Thank you, Gemma. Thanks, Patrick. William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the team for giving us an update. I would congratulate the department actually on their swift work on this. I know the farmer in Armagh very well and was speaking to him, and he was pleased that the department was very helpful in helping him in every way they could and giving him advice. And certainly they were doing an excellent job in relation to that. It's a number of weeks now from there has been any outbreaks. Would you be hopeful that that this has been contained at the moment, would you?
So, William, I'll kick off and maybe hand over to Gillian if that's okay. I suppose one of our fears is, and you're correct, one of our fears in that we haven't had any confirmed cases now since I think about the 19th or 20th of December. So that's a good 3 weeks. We have had a number of report cases in that period that have all been negated, either on clinical visits or on laboratory results. But we're very conscious that complacency is now our biggest enemy, and we need to keep reassuring or reiterating the need for excellent biosecurity and the steps that we're taking to do that. I'll let Julia pick up a little bit on the risk maybe and the using risk, and then I'll come back and maybe a bit about some of the steps we're taking to ensure that complacency isn't set in.
Yeah, William, I think the message that needs to go out at the minute is that we are very conscious that the industry has put a big effort into its biosecurity and in measures to protect itself. And at the minute, that seems to be holding, but we cannot assume that the risk has decreased in any way whatsoever. And I think the longer that we go on without a case, strangely enough, the chances of getting another case increase because people are going to become more complacent. And that's very much what our forthcoming comms are designed to address, is to reinforce to people that this risk has not gone away, that the birds that brought the infection to Northern Ireland are still here, that the infection is still in the environment, and that there is still a risk of further outbreaks in our commercial and non-commercial sectors. So yeah, I'd love to say, end of problem, let's let the birds out and have a party, but that's not where we're at all.
So just to follow, sorry, William.
I was going to say in relation to compensation, and that's quite welcome, but most of those farmers realise that compensation isn't value for loss of income. So many of those farmers, it can be months on end, maybe 9 or 10 months before they have an income actually from their flock again. So it has a big impact on any business financially. So it's imperative for them to uphold their biosecurity as good as possible, because in relation to compensation, some people think they may get compensation for their birds, but the loss of income is a big issue, which is beyond the department's control. I understand that.
Maybe I could say something on that, Jim. Sorry. There is a process to go through before a farm can be restocked and become commercial again. And we are engaging with all the affected farms to make sure that that process is worked through without any delay. Now there is tasks for us to do and tasks for the farmer to do. And then once birds are actually in-house, there is monitoring and surveillance to make sure there's no residual infection there. But we are trying to make sure that these farms get restocked as quickly as possible and that the farmers get back to being able to make an income. So yeah, we appreciate what you said.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Rosemary, last but not least, Rosemary.
Thank you for that. Thank you everybody for your presentation. Just one comment that was made. You spoke that you said, Jim, I think it was Jim, said that the emergency line or the emergency report line was now being stood down, and that the public were to report to the landowners if they seen anything that they thought was a bird or whatever in distress. That to me, and then we're after listening to Julian telling us to improve or to keep our biosecurity up. And I can understand, Julian, what you're saying, but to me, the department are not. Should they not still be having this helpline if necessary, or this emergency line if anybody sees something that is concerning to them in relation to the influenza? And secondly, can I just say that very often people out for a walk see birds in distress, may see birds in distress, and you say report it to the landowner. Some of them haven't a clue who owns what land. Where do they get that information from?
Okay, I can pick up on your first. Okay, can you hear me okay, Rosemary? Yeah, so yeah, I can pick up. Yeah, I can pick up on your first point, and perhaps sorry for any confusion and perhaps what I said. So the DAERA helpline is still active. Our decision was taken on the 13th of December, given that we collect dead wild birds for avian influenza surveillance, and our position at that stage was we knew that the native wild birds had been affected, and given capacity issues as well, both veterinary capacity issues, given we had 5 concurrent outbreaks, and laboratory issues in relation to testing, took the decision at that time to stop testing. But the DAERA helpline is still active, and we are still recording incidents for disease surveillance. Now, we have been in the past couple of weeks reviewing that position very closely in relation to the collection of dead wild birds for surveillance as we move through this outbreak, because that will be important information as we move towards recovery and exit from the general restrictions that are still in place. And I suppose it's important to note as well that whilst the disease control zones are lifting at pace, given the good progression, the avian influenza prevention zone and housing order are still in place in all Ireland, and that's an important message to get out through yourselves and through this broadcast as well, because that's a key defence mechanism to prevent further incursions to those mandatory biosecurity measures in place. So just to provide some reassurance in relation to the helpline is that it's still in place, and our collection of dead wild birds will be starting imminently within the next week or two, whenever we make that decision. I suppose in relation to your second point around sick birds on public land, again, that this comes down to the responsibility, where the responsibility for the welfare of wild animals sits, and from the department's perspective, yes, from a disease surveillance perspective, we are willing to take that information, but the responsibility falls on the respective landowner in relation to any steps that they may decide to take should they wish to.
Okay.
Yeah, but where people are out walking in the countryside, they don't know who owns what land. How do you find that out?
Well, I suppose if it's council land, that's probably most council land is clearly marked. Public land is clearly marked on the entrances, such as parks and things, and forest parks and country parks. That DAERA have responsibility for. Those are clearly marked. I recognise that's a challenge, Rosemary, in relation to where people should report if they feel the need to report. But I suppose there is an aspect here where wildlife do get sick, unfortunately, and not just birds, but all wildlife, and it would be a significant drain on resources if all sick wildlife was reported and dealt with.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, as I have no other members down to ask questions, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Jim and Gemma and Julian for joining us here this morning for this briefing, and we will look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members. I'm going to move on here. Members still online? Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm going to just move on here now. I had touched on item 8, and I subsequently noted that Philip wanted to come in on it. And Philip, do you want to come in on that again? Sorry, I accidentally.
No, you're all right, Chair. I was late in getting. I put my hand up, but I was late getting into the WhatsApp group. But I mean, I have no objection to the issue being dealt with. In fact, I think it should be dealt with. But I'm just a wee bit concerned that we're always going for the LCM option. I note a couple of things from the letter that we received from the department. One being that there's no consultation with stakeholders on the proposed legislation. And secondly, I also note that in Scotland, for example, that they're not going with the LCM option, but they're updating guidance and all of these things. I'm always of the opinion that, if something is worth doing, then why are we not having our own legislation? So, as I say, I'm not objecting to the issue being dealt with, but I do think that maybe perhaps we could or should write to the department and maybe seek clarification on, is it not something that our own minister can bring forward legislation on? Why is there no consultation? And was consideration given to maybe the same as what Scotland's doing, where we update guidance for now, and then, if we haven't time in this mandate, that we look in future mandates at bringing forward our own legislation.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Philip. Okay, happy enough, members? Okay, members, we're going to move on here now to item 9, which is single-use carrier bags charge amendment regulations 2021. We referred these regulations to Examiner Statutory Rules on the 16th of December, and they advised that, as in the table pack, that there are no issues of concern with these regulations, and this will be included in the ESR's report that will be published tomorrow. The regulations are subject to affirmative resolution and will come into effect on the 1st of April 2022. Can I put the question in, members?
Chair.
The committee is is someone in there?
Chair, sorry, excuse me. It's Nick here. Chair, apologies. That item has to be deferred until next week because the ESR has advised us yesterday afternoon that there are some outstanding procedural matters to be dealt with in respect of that item, so it will be tabled next week.
Sorry for moving on too fast there. Okay, thank you for that helpful intervention, Nick. Okay, item 10, members, edible crabs. Claire, are you looking in there? Claire?
Yes, Chair. Again, we delay in unmuting. Listen, just on that one, I know we've just deferred it and we didn't get any papers received yet. But I have a question. I don't know if it's better left until next week, maybe when we come back to that one as well. So just want a wee bit of advice. Is it okay to ask questions on it now, or should we just leave it the next week?
Nick, what's your view on it?
Chair, through you, Claire, my advice probably would be until leave it the next week when we would be in the receipt of the ESR's view, and then we can consider in the round any issues relating to it.
No bother. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Okay, members, item number 10 is the edible crabs amendment order NI 2021, and as well as that ASR 2021-336 edible crabs conservation amendment regulations NI 2021. We're expecting a report from the ESR on these regulations for a meeting today, but we have been advised that they will be reporting on tomorrow, so we'll consider next week. Item 11 is spring traps approval amendment order NI 2021. Again, that'll be included in the ESR's report tomorrow, and we will table this next week. Members, item number 12 is the direct payment to farmers simplification regulations NI 2022. For information, these regulations, which we considered during the autumn, have now come into effect on the 6th of January 2022. Members, item number 13 is the correspondence. I want to refer members to the correspondence at page 252. I'm going to highlight some of them. The ammonia strategies at page 270. Is a response from the department regarding the review of its operational protocol on ammonia emitting projects. The department has advised the revisions are under active consideration and that any proposed revisions will form part of its ammonia strategy consultation. Can we reply? Members will give you a reply to the department seeking clarity on the date of the revision of the protocol to be completed. Okay. Members, another item is the review of Bathing Waters 2022 public consultation. It's page 278 is correspondence from the department outlining the intention to consult on designated bathing waters in due course. Consultation will seek nominations for potential areas to be added to 26 designated bathing sites and consider extension of the bathing season. This is in the context of the increased popularity of open sea swimming activity in recent years. The committee will be briefed on the consultation responses. Okay, members. Members, Climate Change Bill number 2 is page 256. It's a letter from the department inviting the committee to a webinar on the 31st of January at 10 a.m. on Climate Change number 2, a bill at which a number of guest speakers will give talks. The event will be open to all MLAs and invite details and joining instructions will be issued by the department in due course. We're okay to action the correspondence. The remainder of the correspondence is suggested an index sheet. Okay, members, forward work programme is page 338. Can I seek agreement in the forward work programme? All right. And members, if any other business you want to raise before we set the date and time for the next meeting? No. Okay, members, the next formal committee meeting will take place on the next Thursday, the 20th of January at 10 a.m. It will be a hybrid format streamed on the Assembly website. And members, we will be moving to a closed session this afternoon, and what I'm proposing is that we consider the TB eradication strategy at that point, along with our formal consideration of the committee climate change number 2 draft report. Would that be in order, members? Okay. So, okay, members, if you're happy enough with that, then we'll reconvene at, what time is it now? We'll reconvene at 3 p.m, okay? And I'll see you all then. And I want to thank the members of the public that joined in with us this morning, okay? Thank you, folks. Take care now. Right, bye-bye.
Room 30.